Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Secretary will call the roll.
Commissioner Tolson is absent. Commissioner Castleberry.
Here.
Commissioner Rice.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Mann.
Here.
Chairperson Hodge.
Here. Before we go forward, I need to make a bit of an announcement because the process tonight is a little bit out of the ordinary. There is a continued business item specific to the Alamo project, and that question in that particular matter is whether or not there would be a subsequent hearing to reconsider the decision to add additional findings, whatever it is. But that is not a public hearing. At the same time, we want to so there wouldn't be a circumstance where we would go to that agenda item and we would have a public hearing and people would come down and speak, and then we would consider it, and then we would vote whether or not to reconsider it. So instead, what we're going to do is, there is the section in the minutes for public statement. So a lot of you submitted cards that you're opposed to the project and that you don't wish to speak. Your names will be read as being in opposition to the project and not wishing to speak during public statement, which is item 9. For those of you who wrote that you wish to speak about the Alamo project, during public statement, which is item 9, you would be called then. The chair will call you then to come down to speak. It won't be necessarily as we're on that item, it will be during public statement. So everyone here will be able to speak who wishes to speak. Everyone here will have their name entered into the record as being in opposition to that project particularly. It'd just be under item 9.
Item 7. Public statement.
How come you told me it was 9?
It is 9.
It is 9. Oh, it was
Do we have the right calendar?
He's fired. So,
you know what I'm looking at? Huh? Good job.
yeah, it's just. So finishing up on that, just so that you know, if the planning commissioner opts to bring the item back to the planning commission as opposed to moving it forward to the city council, then there will be another noticed public hearing where all the statutory notice that is required to be given will be provided. The meeting will, as you've seen perhaps if you've had a chance to look at the staff report, that meeting would be planned to be February 5. And there would be a public hearing during that meeting where, just like the last time, everyone would have the opportunity to speak. We would be looking at the project de novo. So you would be able to either turn in a card again, you would be able to speak again, you'd be able to send emails or letters in advance of the meeting, just as you did before, if you did. So tonight at the end, or when we get to that item, if we opt to bring it back for another meeting, then you can come back and it's game on, just like it was last time. So you'll be able to speak then as well as this evening if you wish to. I hope that's clear. And that you understand that so it will look a little different than it looked the last time, but you will have the opportunity to have your interests known tonight, and you'll have the opportunity to have your interests known at the next public hearing meeting. Okay? You can ask that question at the public, not now. You can ask, if you have a question, you can come down during public statement and ask it, okay? All righty. Okay, now, I think that we need to approve the agenda and...
It'll be election of officers.
Well, oh, I see. Okay. I will turn the floor over to Mr. Paris.
Okay. This is the time and place. This is for the election of officers for a new chairperson for the Planning Commission and vice chairperson. This is the time and place set for the nomination and election of the Planning Commission chairperson and vice chairperson for 2020. The Simi Valley Municipal Code provides that prior to any vote for the office of chairperson, the city planner must take all nominations for the office of chairperson. All nominations must receive a second. Anyone receiving a nomination may vote for themselves. The floor is now open for nominations for the office of chairperson.
I move to nominate Vice Chair Alan Mann as Commissioner of the Planning Commission.
Second?
You mean as chair?
Correction, as Chair.
Yes, I second for Mr. Mann to be nominated as chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
No.
Okay. And having received all nominations, the vote for chairperson includes Vice Chairperson Alan Mann. The recording secretary will poll the commission on their vote for the office of chairperson.
If you want to throw away your vote.
There you go. The chairperson for the Planning Commission for the year 2020 is Vice Chairperson Alan Mann, now chairperson. The floor is now open for nominations of the office of Vice Chairperson. May you have a nomination?
I nominate Commissioner Castleberry.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. Having received all the nominations, the slate for Vice Chairperson includes Commissioner Castleberry. The recording secretary will poll the commission on their vote for the office of Vice Chairperson.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
There you go. The Vice Chairperson for the Planning Commission for the year 2020 is Commissioner Castleberry. The new chairperson shall take his place at the dais. And we're going to take just a moment. Our recording secretary is going to change the nameplates and update the computer voting system here.
Oh,
Yeah, there's like old times over there. I like it.
okay. It's going to
we
take a
okay?
minute. I just assumed.
Sorry, Jim.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's taking a minute. Okay. 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 Okay, I'm ready. Okay.
Good evening. I'm keeping on with the agenda, and I will apologize for any and all mistakes I make now. This is the first time I've sat in this chair. We are going to go on with approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda by Commissioner Rice, seconded by Commissioner Hodge. Do we vote, or do we just by consent? Absent any objections, the agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes
For December 18th. For
for December 18th.
2019.
I second.
Do I have, well, they were the only two that were here. So,
So you're going to abstain? If Commissioner Hodge and you want to abstain, we can go ahead with a 2-0 vote with
Okay.
abstaining objections.
Yeah, obviously, I need to abstain because I was not present at that meeting. Commissioner Hodge was
Yes,
not
and I have no
present.
objection either.
You can actually vote to approve it, it's item from that. Okay.
We can approve the 2-0, right? Okay. So, absent any objections, we have the two votes for yes and 2 abstentions, the minutes are approved.
Great.
Can you go ahead and read the declaration of conflict, please?
If any member of the Planning Commission may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from consideration of any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Hearing none, moving on. Public statement. Public statement is the time allotted for public statements or comments on all items other than public hearing items. A lot of people came in late, so let me explain kind of what we're doing tonight. A lot of you are here on 12B. 12B is a consent item. It is not an agendized item, so there's not really going to be a long discussion from the Planning Commission. However, everybody in the audience has the right to speak, but you won't be speaking under 12B. You will actually be speaking now under item number 9, public statements. 12B is a discussion between the Planning Commission as to whether or not we're going to deny our appeal, uphold the appeal, or bring it back at a later date. And for those that have read the agenda, it is probably going to come back to the Planning Commission on February 5th, where we're going to do exactly what we did before, somewhat what we're going to do tonight. The developer will make his presentation. We will then hear public comments. We will close the public comments. The Planning Commission will then vote to either approve or deny it again, and then put it off to the City Council. So tonight, you'll be speaking under public comment. Say whatever you want to say. Same rules apply, but just not under item number 12B. With that said, I'm going to read the cards for those that are present, do not wish to speak. If you change your mind and wish to speak, I'll put your card aside, and you can speak after we go through all the cards. And again, I will apologize for saying your name incorrectly. Feel free to correct it.
Chairperson Ban,
Please.
I think you want to identify that now's the time and place for public statements.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. See, I told you I'm new here. Oh, no, it's not. Where's my script? Public comments. This is the time allotted for public statements and comments for all items other than public hearing items. I said that already. I started with that.
Don't let him face it.
Okay. So, well, these are all, the cards are filled out pretty much for 12B, but it's really under public statement, item number 9. Do I need to correct the cards or leave them where they are?
Leave them where they are and state whether or not they're in
Okay.
opposition.
So, Don Jetterberg does not wish to speak. He's in opposition. Again, if you change your mind and want to speak, let me know. Brenda Ayers does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Daryl Gordon does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Barbara Gordon does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Corey Chestnut does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Mary Earl does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Paula Christensen does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Troy Christensen does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Amy Hamlin does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Jerry Hamlin does not wish to speak, is in opposition. John Strickler does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Kathy Strickler does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Deborah Cole does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Doris Gorell does not wish to speak, doesn't state whether they're in support or opposition or comment only. Is Doris in the room? Is in opposition. I'm going to mark your card for that. Bob Gorell does not wish to speak. Opposition. I'm presuming opposition. Smart man, vote the same way the wife does. Sonia Foster does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Steve Foster does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Daphne Belsma, thank you, does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Marie Hutchinson does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Mike Aronson does not wish to speak, in opposition. Judy Aronson does not wish to speak, is in opposition. James Groth does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Linda Groth does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Patty Metches does not wish to speak, is in opposition. Ron Metches does not wish to speak, in opposition. Again, I apologize if I butcher your name there. Andrew Skipper does not wish to speak, in opposition. Jean Praga does not wish to speak, does not say in support or in opposition. In opposition. I will modify your card for you. Howard Hoffman does not wish to speak, in opposition. Maria Hoffman does not wish to speak. Again, I'm assuming in opposition, but is she present? Maria Hoffman? Opposition, thank you. Sean Hart does not wish to speak, in opposition. Charles Swanson does not wish to speak, in opposition. Barbara Swanson does not wish to speak, in opposition. Robert Laney does not wish to speak, in opposition. Anna LaRusso does not wish to speak, in opposition. Roger Yang does not wish to speak. In opposition, Scott Lakoff does not wish to speak. In opposition, Sherry Byers does not wish to speak. In opposition, Alexander Nemethy does not wish to speak. In opposition, Anna Marie Nemethy does not wish to speak. In opposition, Agnes Nemethy Foote does not wish to speak. In opposition, Maria Okas does not wish to speak. In opposition, we're about halfway through the cards. Lisa Atwood does not wish to speak. In opposition, David McDowell does not wish to speak. In opposition, Eric Stausenberger does not wish to speak. In opposition, Gladys Stausenberger does not wish to speak. In opposition, Carol Thomas, no. Carol Tamayer does not wish to speak. In opposition, Bill Monahan does not wish to speak. In opposition, Kathy Monahan does not wish to speak. In opposition, Jessica Vanderswag does not wish to speak. In opposition, Denise Pistone. In opposition, it doesn't say whether you wish to speak or not speak. Does not wish to speak. Again, I'll modify the card. Craig Sinise does not wish to speak. In opposition, Annette Claire. Clock says in opposition to speak or not to speak. Do you wish to speak?
I'll speak next time.
Okay. Nick Damian does not wish to speak. In opposition, Julie Bershin does not wish to speak. In opposition, Chris Phillip does not wish to speak. In opposition, Steve Roberts does not wish to speak. In opposition, John and Dina Hertz does not wish to speak. In opposition, Judy Scheibel, my apologies, does not wish to speak. In opposition, Teresa Daniel does not wish to speak. In opposition, Chidi Daniel does not wish to speak. In opposition, David Weil does not wish to speak. In opposition, Elise Weil does not wish to speak. In opposition. Those are those that are listed as not wishing to speak in opposition. I will now call the cards for those that want to come down and speak, and they have 3 minutes. Starting off, Donna Chisholm. And I'll call the next one too if you want to just get yourself ready to go. Lyle Hibes will be after Donna.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Donna Chisholm. I reside on Hereford Court here in Simi Valley. I've been a resident of Simi since 1972. I've always appreciated the design and the slow growth Simi has undertaken, and the open space and view of surrounding hills is what has attracted and continues to attract many residents to live in Simi Valley. Regarding the proposed development in question, I am opposed to this project for all the reasons that you heard at the last Planning Commission meeting on December 4th. The height, the density, the lack of parking, safety concerns regarding the driveways, setbacks, et cetera. I want it on record that this project as proposed is not in alignment with existing neighborhood guidelines, despite the letter that was sent from Deputy Director Olmsted. While I'm aware of the potential risk for litigation if this project is denied, again, and I emphasize again, a one-size-fits-all approach to addressing affordable housing does not seem equitable, nor is it appropriate in this case. There's a couple of items I would like clarification on. In addition to discussing safety measures in driveway-related areas, is the applicant also willing to reduce the height and density of this project so it aligns with existing neighborhood guidelines? If AMG were willing to listen to residents and propose a project that would fit in the proposed location, we could move forward in a harmonious manner and embrace this project. On page 6 of Mr. Olmsted's letter, third paragraph, he states, disapproval of the project by the City Council without requisite findings supported by a preponderance of evidence risks violating the Housing Accountability Act. My question is, what are requisite findings and what is a preponderance of evidence? I hope you can provide answers to my questions at the end of this meeting and/or prior to the next vote. Lastly, I want to state that this project, as currently proposed, will cause an adverse impact on public health and safety due to the traffic, size, density, and lack of adequate parking. I thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns relating to this unwanted project. Thank you.
Thank you. Lyle Hibs. Following that will be Charles Deep.
Commissioners, any city employees, and all of my wonderful neighbors. I'm here tonight just to give you my feelings. 56 years ago in April, I moved from San Fernando to Simi Valley. I raised 3 kids here. I'm living in the same house, single story, Bellwood tract home. It was recommended by someone else that lived here, and I think at the time there were about 39,000 people. I've seen a lot of changes, and if you look around the Bellwood area, around our area near the Alamo, Tapo area, you're going to see changes that happen. You're going to see a lot of 2-story buildings. You're going to see a lot of 1-story buildings. You saw apartment buildings east of the property that we're talking about. You saw they were 2 stories. 2 stories west, across the streets, CVS, single story. Other homes that have gone in have been 2 stories in this area. It's a residential area. It's been great living there. The changes that I saw have been a good fit for the residential area. There are other areas like down at the Farmers Insurance Building. There are huge things in that, but they're in a different area. They're in a commercial area, not in a residential area. A big concern I have is traffic. I've been driving since Tapo was just a little 2-lane street. And then when things started expanding, it went into 4 lanes. But if you go to the intersection of Tapo and Alamo, and you're trying to go north, make a left turn, anybody coming from the east on Alamo, you can't see them. I've had to really rip my tires to get out of the way because people come through there 60, 70 miles an hour. Now we're going to add another 600 cars coming out at various times with the project the way it is. And I don't see how we're going to continue with that type of a traffic control with that many cars, and particularly even when the school's out, you can line up down at that intersection for 5-10 minutes. So traffic is a big problem. Basically, it's going to really be terrible if you put this many cars in. The other thing I'd concern is every month I think I get a gas bill, I get a light bill, I get a power bill, I get a water bill, and there's increases for improvements and repairs. And we're just adding to that. I don't know if we planned for that to put this many people. If you're talking about like 270-some with 2, 3, 4 people, and probably 5 in some of them, you're going to really be pushing the infrastructure. And now here goes my bill to pay for that. I'm the only one living in my house now. I lost my wife, and I'm the one there, so I don't use that much anymore. I really think that the building is out of place. I know something has to go in there. Something has to go in. But I think the height of the building and the number of people there is just too much for it. I've got a saying, I'm almost 84 years old, and I'm glad I'm not going to have to go through this too much longer. Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder, when you see the yellow light flash in front of you, that's the time to wrap it up. That's 30 seconds. And then when you see the red, you really need to cut yourself off rather than me. Thank you. Charles, FEP? If Charles comes back, we'll put him back on. Scott Kennedy? Okay.
Charles is coming.
This is Charles.
Oh, this is Charles? Thank you.
Charles Monroe. Thank you for the time. I suppose I should introduce myself. I'm Charles Monroe. My family and I have been out here since 1981, although I passed through here in 1957 when there was practically nothing here. To introduce myself, I am a member of the Council of Fellows, the American Society of Professional Estimators. I'm a certified professional construction estimator and have been since, 36 years, and estimating for 60 years. Presently, I'm engaged in appearing in court as an expert witness. Rather than criticize the project, I believe there's a lot of problems with this project, and they're not all just dealing with traffic, with infrastructure such as sewer, and that there's also some nasty political problems that I can see that cause some politicians some real trouble. I think there's several solutions. One, which I don't think is going to pass with the developer. I have suggested in the past, take that property, clear it, and put anywhere from 6 to 8 high-end single-family houses there. That's very low traffic, very low increase in infrastructure. You're probably talking about $8, $10, $12 million. There's not much profit in that, and I can see they'd turn it down. Second proposition is that maybe Simi Valley could find some property in a suitable area or annex some property adjacent to Simi Valley, an unincorporated area, and do a land swap. Here, go build your apartment here. Nobody's going to object. We'll take that property, turn it into a community center or a park. That's my idea. I don't have all the particulars, but that's the Planning Commission's bailiwick. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Kennedy, followed by Robert Cole.
Good evening, everybody. I think that we're all in agreement that nobody wants this project. The city of Simi Valley doesn't want this project. The commissioners don't want this project. The only one that wants this project are the developer and Sacramento. And we are why would we have a planning commission when Sacramento basically tells us what we're going to do with our own property? So are we just going to have a rubber stamp of local communities, or are we going to stand up? And that, to me, is the only real problem here, because we can build all sorts of projects, but this one does not go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Robert Cole, followed by Hizzy Levy. I will, again, apologize.
Good evening. My name's Robert Cole. I've been employed in Los Angeles enforcing the zoning codes and the building codes for 20 years. I can tell you, the first point I have is I can tell you this is not a mixed-use building. It's all residential with a leasing office. And it looks like, I believe the mixed-use overlay district requires 25% commercial in order to increase the height of a building. It seems that the Planning Commission in the city is considering concessions to the developer to increase the height of this building when it is not a mixed-use building. It's the wrong thing to do. 55 feet high, it's a bad decision. The other point I'd like to make is that I can tell you from firsthand experience that this project is too tall and too close to the city sidewalk. The Planning Commission staff itself says that the building will be pushed close to the small intersection of Taplow Street and Alamo. The city is planning to give concessions to the developer to reduce the required building setbacks from 60 feet along Taplow Street to just 13 feet. That's a 47-foot reduction in the setback. And to reduce the required setback along Alamo from 23 feet to just 13 feet. This will become a huge 55-foot high monstrosity, too close to the city streets. The effect of a building this tall near the intersection is completely out of character in this location and will be an urban eyesore. The city should enforce the existing setback requirements and not give them away.
Heza Levy, H-E-Z-I, Levy, L-E-V-I, followed by Tracy Chemical. Thank you.
I'm Hezekiah Levi, excuse my voice. I have lived here since 1987 with my house and my companion. I have been riding my bikes on that street. This building will cause a major catastrophe. You know, any of you live here in this town to see how many accidents happen in that corner? No, you don't, because you don't live here. We live here.
A child was killed on one of those corners.
The white bike that was on that corner.
A child was killed.
Killed because people don't understand that corner. And I'm going to tell you, with my rainbow kraut, you want to say whatever you want to me, I am really astonished that none of you understand that building will cause more traffic and more accidents. If you do your homework, you will understand how many accidents have happened there by CVS. That's why there's no stores hardly there anymore, because too many accidents have happened and killed people and children. I'll calm down now, and I just want to say thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Tracy, followed by Roberta McDonald.
Hi. I'm sorry, I want to tell you about a family outing we had. When I start, I'm going to tell you I live at the corner of Bernard and Cadota. For whatever reason, why Bernard was left off here, whatever planning, is beyond me. My family, my 2 kids and my husband were in the car, and I went to close our gate. And the crash that I heard behind me, I've never heard. And when I turned around and I saw the car land, and the airbags and the smoke, and I ran over there. And I opened the door and I swore she was dead. She didn't move for 30, 45 seconds at all. No motion, no nothing. There's kids that live on 3 of the corners on that street. And it's just a stop sign. Not even a light, a stop sign. I invite you to come sit in my front yard and watch how many people run that stop sign in an hour. And that damn news van that goes speeding around the corner, and one of these days he's gonna hit somebody. You can't put more people in this area. Somebody really will die. Besides that, there'll be more. There'll be many more.
Roberta, followed by Laura Altunian.
Hi, I'm Roberta McDonough. Good evening. Thank you for listening. What I want to say is thank you all very much for your denial in the last meeting for this proposal of this horrendous building that they want to put in there. I truly appreciate you standing up for us, and I hope that you continue to do so going forward.
Laura, followed by Merle McLean.
So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns. My name is Laura Altooni, and I'm the board president of Park Lane Townhomes. Park Lane's located directly behind the proposed development to the north. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the residents who could not attend. I'm going to be addressing multiple concerns today. There are currently 2 driveways right next to each other, ours and the Bellwood Shopping Center. They cannot be more than 10 feet apart. This driveway for the Bellwood development was previously used for trucks dropping off their loads, not a thoroughfare for 1,000 cars. Having a driveway that will be used for this particular use will create a safety hazard. There will be a continual stream of cars coming from 2 driveways right next to each other, turning left. It will be impossible to merge onto oncoming traffic, and the residents will be risking their safety every time. It will only be a matter of time before there are numerous injuries or worse, fatalities. All the residents located next to the development are going to lose their privacy. We have a lot of concerns about that. There will be over 100 residents looking into their windows, patios, and balconies. Our view of the mountains will be gone and replaced with a view of a stucco building. The current thinking of the developer is that many of the residents will not have cars. There is not enough parking for the residents of the proposed development, their visitors, and the customers of the retail businesses. It has not been addressed as to where these individuals will park. There is no street parking in front of the proposed development. The condo and the townhome properties next to this development will begin experiencing illegal parking. Currently, we do not have any issues with other residents outside our development parking and our visitor parking. In order to control illegal parking, we're going to need to hire a security company to monitor and tow these cars, or we will need to install electronic gates at a cost of approximately $100,000. Who's going to pay for this? AMG? The city of Simi? We're a small community. We can't afford this. We also are going to need to install plant cypress trees because we need privacy. We don't want to look at that stucco building that's right next to us. So it's not our responsibility to incur these costs due to the lack of the planning and the impact to the neighborhood. This is a legitimate question. How do we protect our community from this situation? I want to know who's going to pay for this. Are you going to give AMG what they want because they're threatening to fine the city, or are going to take a stand for what we believe in? What we know is the right thing to do for this community. We have all along been willing to work with AMG. It is AMG that is unwilling to work with us.
Marilee, followed by Russ Nestor.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for declining our last visit. I know it's been difficult for you. And there are a few things that I didn't say the last time. I used to live in Park Lane, the condos behind it, and I think it's a 2-story, the old market that was there. It's already like an eyesore and a huge wall of bricks, and now I live flip side of that. I live on the street that when you pull out of the jail area, when you pull out because you can't make a left to go back to Alamo, you'll have to make a right, which I'm on the corner of that street. So everyone who leaves because they can't make a left to go back to Alamo has to turn right. They'll have to turn right down the first street, which is Fort Worth. It has all the traffic that goes to the schools, but besides that, you'll turn down, and our neighborhood street will turn into a boulevard trying to get back to the freeway. And there'll be parking there through Park Lane and on our street. So it will turn into a parking lot. And, you know, I cannot understand why you'd even put this into thought, but there has to be more thinking in it that if you can't move it that close to the street, number one, and the point that you'd even think about that or even partially okay that is absolutely crazy. That's number one. And number two, if they're going to spend all this money redeveloping this lot, then there has to be an area that they can pull in and pull out that's on the main street. Like, using these old driveways is crazy. And I can't believe you would even allow that. It's insane. So there has to be so much more, you know, lowering the building, not so many stories. Creekside apartment building was all low income. It was a disaster area. They kicked everybody out and taken it back to, you know, a rental without the low income. I mean, the place was destroyed. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you need to keep considering, and you need to, you know, stop this again, and we'll all stand behind you.
Thank you. Russ Nestor, followed by Keith Kelly.
Well, I was here before, so you probably remember me. I've been a civil, structural, and geotechnical engineer in the state of California for about 35 years, 40 years. And I started my practice with Caltrans as a traffic engineer, so a lot of what's in the traffic report is familiar to me. And I won't bore you with all the details that I discussed before, but I'll recap very quickly. What's missing in the traffic report that says all is well, that's a fatal exception to it, is all the things that have to do with the things you just heard, all the local traffic. They looked at this building on this corner and those two streets as though there was nothing else in the world but this building and those two streets. And that's not true at all. You have to consider everything existing build out. Park Lane to the north has 61 homes, generating 84 peak hour trips. Alamo Villas to the east has another 71 homes, generating another 126 peak hour trips. And the apartments alone will generate 283 peak hour trips by your own traffic department's estimate. That's a 250% increase. But it's actually worse than that, because once this goes in, all those folks are going to realize that the only way they can go from their apartment to the freeway or anywhere to the south is through the Alamo Street entrance and exits. The Tapo Street only goes north. You won't be able to turn south. You can't turn south legally now. So that 250% might be actually conservative. And so that puts all the ingress and egress through two driveways, two-way driveways that are separated by only about 30 feet. That is a traffic engineer's nightmare. That is no traffic engineer, no sane traffic engineer, no experienced traffic engineer anywhere would say that's a good thing. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be an undesirable place to live because of this traffic. You will be devaluing all the surrounding properties because it will not be a good place to be anymore. And that recaps what I said last time. But I wanted to add one more thought that I had that I missed because of the red light before. You can't fix this later. There's no way this can be reconfigured. You can't add lanes to the street. You can't reconfigure the building to have the driveway come out in another place. You'd have to restructure the whole building. So you can't fix it later. So surely there must be limits on this unlimited exceptions clause in the state law where public safety is at risk, and public safety is at risk here. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Kelly, followed by Steve Vanderswag.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Keith Kelly. I've been a resident since 1977. And since this is the general comment area, let me start off with an oddball one for you. Now that the city has been coerced for the city council to be representation by district, and the commissioners are all appointed by city council members, I'm wondering how and when the planning commission is going to be reconfigured. And has anyone given any thought to that process? It's coming up soon. Second point is I would like the city attorney or that office to give some idea of if there's any way that we can resist this coercion and direction from the state on, what are clearly local planning issues. Not that it would have any real impact, but I think the public would be greatly reassured if we had some legal recourse to fight this battle. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the third. Oh, third point was if indeed we are forced to go with this development, under the direction of our state government and the developer, then is it within the authority of the Planning Commission to require that the entire project be low income, which would go a long ways towards solving our RENA problem. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Vanderswag, followed by Cheryl Consta.
Good evening, gentlemen. Hopefully this comes out properly. I just wrote this out, so hopefully it reads well. My name is Steve Vanderswag. I'm a 38-year resident and 20-year business owner here locally in town. I used to love this city, and every year my opinion seems to change for the worse, and that's a shame. As a community, we have the ability to create a desirable community, or we can decide to try to keep squeezing more out of it and ultimately destroy what we have. I'm opposed to altering the overall conforming building style of our city. Your decision is much greater than this one proposed complex. If this project moves forward, many more will come to our city. I see this as more important than this one complex. I see it as giving the green light to accepting a new standard of 4- and 5-story buildings throughout our city. It has been said by this commission that it's the state that is forcing our city by the state guidelines, by the state's requirement of building size and standards. My request is our city representatives consult the best suitable attorneys who may help our city take back our own authority, as this project will open up the floodgates to other future development and ultimately destroy the city that we love. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, followed by Caitlin Atwood.
Just quickly, when the old Big Spring School was built into the 48 homes, there are certain things that they said that were going to happen that did not happen. They didn't put the stop sign where they said that they would leave the houses at the same ground level as the houses across, and that didn't happen. My concern is the same thing here. We're talking about this building and that I do not want. Where's the guarantee that all these things that they say they're going to do, where's that guarantee that it will be low income? when Runkle Canyon was built, they said they were going to build a low-income apartment there, and the builder took a $1 million or two fine instead of building low-income housing. So that's what this project is coming down to, is whether it's low-income or very low-income housing. Where's our guarantee that that's going to even happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin, followed by Carl Waite.
Hi, I'm a resident on Bernard Street. I've been here at the location since 1994. I have seen firsthand people flying down my street as it's the exit off of Stearns, and that's been happening since I was a childhood. The first thing my dad had to do was put up a fence, because what are you going to do when you have kids on a street that people act like is a freeway? And it's only gotten worse and worse. Adding this many vehicles won't just affect our street. We have Park Lane saying it's going to affect their neighborhoods as well, and I can see that. And it's a community issue. It's a safety issue. Where is the traffic study into Bernard Street is my big question. Why did that get discluded? This is a huge issue for our street, a street that hasn't been maintained by the city. So where is the city coming to play for the residents that are standing up for themselves and want to see development? I'm not saying don't develop the property, but 4 stories with this many residents and mixed use that isn't a mixed use, and what everyone else has mentioned. I appreciate that you guys denied it the last time, and I hope to see the same thing happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Waite.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I wanted to, my name's Carl Waite, and I've lived at Park Lane for 18 years, and I'm currently the vice president. And first of all, I wanted to compliment our president for her presentation. You can see why she's president, so and I'm good for that. My job's easy. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit was, I found it peculiar during the last presentation when AMG was here, is that they showed the elevations from the west exposure and the south exposure. The 2 exposures that they didn't show, which is what the community is going to see, is the north and the east exposure. Somehow they forgot that. In other words, it's my view that that's their signal they're turning the back on the community and doing what they want. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, I would challenge all of you to go to any apartment complex in the city of Simi Valley, particularly the larger ones, which are more equated to what they're trying to do here. Go there about 2 in the morning. See how many cars are parked on the street. They're not parking there because street parking is better than on-site parking. They're parking there because there's not enough parking, and this project won't have it either. So we already know what's going to happen. The size of the building, go to San Fernando Valley. Parking issues, you can do that to San Fernando Valley, but you can do that closer here. So just something to keep in mind. And when you're out there and with your wife, have a nice night drive, just take a look. See what you got coming forward, because that's what's up. That's what's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the chamber that did not submit a card that wishes to be heard? There was one more card submitted. Please come on down, sir. If you can't fill out a card after you speak, but come down and tell us who you are and talk.
Hello, my name is Juan Ordonez, and I live on Bernard Street. And like some of the people have said already, I don't understand why they didn't put Bernard Street when they did the study of the traffic. And I have 2 kids, and I'm lucky that we have a gate. So my kids or my animals don't go outside. But there'll be 2 o'clock in the morning, and you can hear it. It's just like bikes racing down the street or big loud cars. So I think that you guys gotta have to do something about, either do another study or minimize the size of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there's another.
Yeah, please.
Again, if you can, fill out a card when you're done speaking, just so we can keep a record of it.
Okay. My name is James Groth. I live on Lubbock Drive. As was mentioned before, the citizens of Lubbock Drive and the Texas Tract would really like to see on that corner, how about a park with ponds and fountains and a jogging track? Wouldn't that be great? That's what the residents would really like to see. But the Texas Tract's residents understand that this is an unreasonable expectation and that progress we may not like is inevitable. Unreasonable is the key word. As a Texas Tract resident, like my fellow neighbors, I am not unreasonable to think that a development that I may not like is inevitable. However, the degree of development is what we are concerned about. Texas Tract residents are willing to accept reasonable development on that property discussed. Even a two-story development has implications that will mostly likely impact the traffic, the noise level, the crime, the safety, and the property value of the surrounding neighborhood in a negative way. That being said, in discussing the proposed development with fellow neighbors, we are willing to make those sacrifices in the name of progress and inevitability. Any development in the proposed site is going to have impact on the surrounding neighborhood. Texas Tract residents accept that. What we cannot accept is a 4-story, high-density development that egregiously attempts to destroy the benefits and character of living in the neighborhood. We cannot accept the degree in which the neighborhood will be altered. Any new development proposed needs to work in concert with the existing neighborhood. How the Texas Tract lifestyle will be altered and to what degree should be the first thing considered when a new development is proposed. It is obvious that AMG has zero concern for the citizens who were here first and how our neighborhood will be impacted. It couldn't be more obvious this is about more money in the pockets. I respectfully request the council to vote down the proposed development as it currently stands. It is unfair to the current neighborhood. It is not in keeping with the values of Simi Valley as a whole, and it would serve only to benefit those that have no interest in the well-being of our city.
Thank you. One more. And James, I found your card, and I just went ahead and changed it to a wishes to speak. Please.
And Jen, you'll have to change mine too. I wasn't going to speak. My name is Ann Reese. I spoke last time. I didn't know this was going on, and as I got a pop-up on my computer, I thought, oh, I better run down here. Everybody else has said what my concerns are. I live in this area. I come out Yukon, and I go south on Tapo most days. This is the most ill-thought-of proposal and plan that I've ever heard of. 2 entries, no way to get to the freeway, no place to park, 278 units, including 40-some 4-bedroom apartments. Who has ever heard of a 4-bedroom apartment? I mean, seriously, 4-bedroom apartment? What are they planning here? AMG has never wanted to work with the residents. As everyone else said, I understand that something is going to have to go in there. And frankly, I'm tired of the eyesore too. So something needs to be done there. But to put that huge 4-story monstrosity 13 feet from the street, accidents will happen, people will die, and I don't know what kind of a nightmare 800 cars are going to cause in that area, because I believe last time it was discussed that there were going to be 250 parking places. That's less than the amount of units. And we all know everybody has 2 and 3 cars in Simi. I really think, and like the other lady said, I so appreciated your vote against this project. Those of us who sat here till 11 o'clock that night were thrilled to finally have somebody listen to us. I understand that there's lawsuits, and I understand that the state of California is putting us in a difficult position. But as a city of Simi Valley, we have some rights as well. And the people who live here, our livelihood, our progeny, our property values, we are owed to have some voice in this, not having Sacramento tell us what we can do and what we can't do.
Been here for 30 years, don't get it, go girl.
In our hearts, we all know this is wrong for this neighborhood and for this city. Once we build this first monstrosity, everybody will be coming here to build them again. And how are you going to say no once we already said yes? Please do the right thing and continue to oppose this just as we are. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one additional card on this matter. It was not wishing to speak. Vadim,
No, it was wishing to speak for me, for Canada.
you wish to speak.
Anna Vichenkina, I'm his wife. I have
Okay, please come on down. I only have the card from him. I don't have yours. If I could at some point.
2 cards, I'm not sure where it's on, but I'd be willing to complete another one.
Perfect, thank you.
Hello. I spoke last time as well, and I really want to say I really appreciated everybody who voted in the way that you did, supporting the community. I have some of the rambling comments, but some of the actual comments, but I just cannot not do them. So I don't trust the traffic study that was paid for by the applicant, and I'm wondering if there could be another study, because there were concerns that were brought up by the people of Simi Valley in terms, and civil engineer. Like, I want to see another study that's independent from the study that's been provided by the applicant. Can we have that done? The last time, applicant agreed that there will be an increased number of accidents, but they will be at lower speeds, and that was going to be okay. I cannot describe how appalling that is. It's just unbelievable. So when that actually will happen, who are people going to sue? Are they going to sue the city of Simi Valley? Are they going to sue the applicant? The applicant will be gone. Are they going to sue the city that allowed this construction to go on? Are they going to sue the federal government that pushed it down the way that allowed all kind of exemptions for them? So this is really, this is a little bit of rambling, but is there other ways that city can obtain the quota for the low-income housing? I know, for example, city of West Hollywood requires, well, I'm not sure if it's a requirement for all the developers, but I know that even the townhouses and condominiums have 5% of the units, let's say they're doing the sales, the 5% remaining of the units are designated as low-income housing. So that's mixed, it mixes the population, and everybody's happy. And it's a different type of a construction. And we have in Simi Valley a lot of townhouses and condominiums being built up. If we use that, maybe this can increase potentially the quota that we're supposed to meet as the city. This is definitely not mixed-use building. The 2% is like a joke that's left it's like a loophole. That's probably I don't think they could do any less. I think if they could have left the parking lot next to the Pizza Hut, they would. So that's like a joke. But how does it project even, I don't even understand how this project even got to the point of approval, and pretty much the only thing that is commercial uses there is their leasing office. I don't understand. Why do we, as citizens that we live in Simi Valley, we pay taxes in Simi Valley, but why do we have to obey the laws and the setbacks where the applicant is trying to avoid obeying the same laws? If I were to come to the city hall and say, I want to build, the amount of the feet that they're asking for the setback, I would be told no. You have to obey the laws. Why do they not have to do the same thing? Thank you. I hope that the city has the power to enforce the laws for all of the citizens and developers alike. The School of Big Springs is full. My kids go there, like all three of them. They take turns. They are building a house with 2,500 people. I think last time we talked about with the allowed density that up to 2,500 people will be living there, how the school is going to be impacted. What a shame that a company that is trying to squeeze every inch to get their $100 million is patronizingly lecturing us on social justice and makes it look like this is about social justice.
I need you to wrap it up. You're
Last
over time.
thing. I just
Okay?
want to say, I understand that there is pressure from elected officials in federal government, and I'm learning all of your names and faces, and I know that you're commissioners, you're doing this on your volunteer time. I really appreciate it. But next time you want to get elected, I will remember your names and your faces. And my vote is going to be with you.
Thank you.
Please do the right thing. I know it's like a lot of pressure. Thank you very much.
If there's no other cards or speakers for public, please. Again, afterwards, if you could fill out a green card, turn it in.
I changed my mind, so okay. I said, yeah, Terry Daniel is my name. You have my card.
Okay.
Thank you for voting against this project the first time around. Some things I didn't hear come up, and I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, so maybe they came up at the last meeting, were the issues of noise pollution, light pollution, and air pollution, and how those are going to affect the overall environment of this neighborhood. I live in the Park Lane townhomes, and so that I will be directly affected by that. I'm curious to know more about the long-term health impacts that a construction of this size, the whole process, will have, particularly on us and Alamo Villas. I have a small baby, so I'm concerned about how all the dust and particulate matter and stuff like that is going to get into our home and affect her health. And then I'm just curious, do the benefits this development provide to the community outweigh the long-term and short-term costs? Are they going to, contribute to our taxes and the overall improvement of Simi Valley? So please set the right precedent. Please, again, reject this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there's nobody else on what would be 12B for public statements, you can still talk on 13B1 and 13B2 because those are agendized items. But if there's no other people wishing to speak on public statements, I'm going to go ahead and close out public statements, and we're going to move on to correspondence.
Thank you, Chairman Mann. We have some correspondence on the dais tonight, and it should be in front of you and also at the table outside. And this is regarding the some communications that we received regarding the Tapo and Alamo project that were emailed to the office since the Planning Commission staff report went out.
We didn't use that EA card for 13B1.
When I call 13B1, you can go ahead and fill out a card now or fill it out after you speak. I'm sorry?
We'll call
okay.
you at that time.
Yeah, we're not at 13B yet. That's an agendized item, so you'll be able to talk about that one when that one comes up. That's right.
That's it.
That's it. Consent calendar?
I don't think we have any items.
None?
No.
Continued business?
Yes, we do have the one item. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is regarding the Tapo and Alamo project. At the December 4th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission recommended denial of the Tapo and Alamo project by a 5-0 vote. Subsequently, on December 16th, the city received a letter from the Department of Housing and Community Development. The purpose of this letter was to inform the city that if the City Council were to deny the project, it would risk violating provisions of a multitude of state housing laws with resulting consequences. The letter further states that the Housing and Community Development Department is mandated to review local government actions and inactions, including housing element program implementation. And if the HCD, or Housing Community Development Department, were to find that the city's act or mission were to not substantially comply with state law, our city's housing element compliance may be revoked, and the Housing and Community Development Department may notify the Attorney General's office that the city is in violation of state law. In the Planning Commission's motion for denial, the Planning Commission found that the proximity of the existing easternmost project driveway to the east could represent a specific adverse impact upon public health and safety. And subsequent to the receipt of the Housing and Community Development letter and in consultation with our city attorney's office, Planning Commissioners Hodge and Planning Commissioner Castleberry met with the applicant on following the December 4th meeting in order to discuss that specific safety concern raised at the meeting. And it appears that the applicant is willing to have a Planning Commission hold a public hearing to reconsider the project and to consider modifications to the project by potentially adding traffic safety measures for the driveway and/or related areas. To undertake this option, the Planning Commission has the option of setting a duly noticed public hearing, at which time these alterations to the project can be considered. Therefore, it is recommended that instead of adopting a resolution of project denial, that the Planning Commission adopt a motion to reconsider the project at the next available public hearing date on February 5th, 2020. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to be made on
to reconsider?
Reconsideration?
Would you like to have some conversation first about some of the implications, thoughts?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Commissioner Casper is ready to run.
If I could have staff clarify for the commissioners as well as the audience what exactly decertification of our housing element would look like if this project was to be denied and the state was to find us out of compliance with HAA.
What that means to have our housing element decertified means we would lose local control of any construction and building in the city. A court would decide which projects got approved, and we could not issue building permits by Building and Safety.
So that's on any project, not just this project. We would have no say over any project.
If our housing element is decertified, we lose that local control.
Yeah, I like for the people that first of all, thanks to everybody who came to speak on public statements. I'd like to take a look, read a portion of the staff report because I don't know if everybody's had the opportunity. I don't know if I can hear myself. Can you hear? Am I good? Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Under the section of recommendation on page 2, it says it is recommended that instead of adopting a resolution of project denial, parentheses, for which another hearing would also be advisable due to the lack of sufficient evidence under the Housing Accountability Act, close parentheses, that the Planning Commission adopt a motion to reconsider the project at the next available public hearing date on February 5, 2020. This will allow the applicant and staff an opportunity to present and review any traffic study modifications to the project and to allow the Planning Commission to fully consider its recommendation to the City Council in light of the letter received from the Housing Community Development, and based on from HCD and based on the required findings of the Housing Accountability Act. I'm in support of having another meeting on this, and there are a number of reasons why. The first one is I would like to hear from staff regarding the traffic safety modifications. I would like to hear staff on the issue of some of the other traffic issues, specifically as to Bernard, some of the other considerations that were brought tonight. There was, I think everything that was said at the meeting in December was probably said at least substantially tonight, but at the same time, there were some things that were said tonight that I don't think were said. And I've written them down, and I've got questions that I'm going to be communicating to staff over between now and then that I think require review. One of the things that what we do is on this particular project, we make recommendation to the City Council. The City Council relies upon us to do the deep dive if we can, to find all the information out both for and against a particular project. The state law mandates that there has to be specific findings on specific matters, and you have to articulate them. You just can't say, I don't like it. You can't say, I think it's unsafe. You have to articulate these things and explain them out in order to have a defensible result. If we don't provide, we would have an opportunity by having another meeting to once again get additional comments, greater clarity from the public, greater clarity from staff, to have an opportunity to review between ourselves again how to articulate our either support or failure to support the project. I've had a number of conversations with staff since that last meeting and come to understand that I had recommended denial on the basis of certain things at that meeting. For those of you that were here, you might remember. And I think that everybody else did the same thing. All of us did. It was a 5-0 vote. I've come to realize that what I should have done in that meeting was not vote to deny the project, but to approve it with conditions and say, here are these conditions, and if you don't meet these conditions, guess what? You can't build. But I probably didn't articulate sufficiently why it should be denied. And so I'm worried that if it goes to the city council and it goes forward, then we haven't properly done our job enough to defend, legally defend, by failing to provide that articulated bases for the decision to defend, why we did something. And that's why we got that letter from HCD, which, maybe some of you have seen. If you haven't seen it, it's not a friendly letter. So what I'm hoping to do is to continue this to another meeting. I apologize that this is going to require you another evening of your time. I'm very appreciative that everyone has come down and is so passionate about this. And I hope that you believe that we listen. By the way, all the commissioners do live in town. We do get paid. We do get paid, and we're not elected. So anyway, so it's just clearing that up a little bit. So my thought is, and just to let you know, we can. I don't know what my fellow commissioners have done. I did meet with the applicant, with Commissioner Castleberry. We were talking about safety issues and finding out what they might do to improve on some of those conditions. I actually came down and spent a few hours of my time reading the correspondence file from the project back from 2015 to current, because I was trying to fill in some blanks and try to learn more information. And it was fascinating, but actually in a lot of ways it was fascinating. There was a lot of things that I was able to learn from that, and I'm going to have questions regarding that. So my hope is that the commissioners that are here tonight will vote to bring this back to us so that we can do. We may end up approving it. I'm not going to prejudge, okay? I wouldn't prejudge for you or against you either before or after the hearing. Well, after the hearing, yeah, I've already judged. But in fairness to everybody, I'm not going to say how I'm going to go, but I do want another shot at taking a look at the findings. I want another shot at articulating the specifics of why we like or fail to like something. I want to hear a little bit more from the public. I'd like to hear more from the traffic folks. I'd like to hear more from staff. And if we're going to do this right, we're going to have another look at it. Okay?
Any comments?
I don't know how I can follow that.
Don't even try.
I'm not going to try to follow Commissioner Hodge on that.
I would just say I would concur that regardless of what our inclination is, I think we have to have another public hearing, because if we do want denial, it doesn't appear there's sufficient evidence to hold up in court. I would like the city attorney just to weigh in regarding if there's ever been a lawsuit regarding regarding HAA noncompliance, and if a city's ever actually been able to beat the state back when they come in.
We've had a chance to visit the HCD website, and you have to dig deep that they are actively engaged in enforcing the state's regulations. We would have to do an extensive research as to any pending litigation or consequences.
Okay. With that, I would support the proposal by Commissioner Hodge.
Would that be a motion for reconsideration?
Yeah, we actually. Any other conversations from the planning commissioner? Go ahead. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to reconsider the denial to the next. Well, it's actually just a motion for reconsideration. Motion for reconsideration to February 5th. And to continue the project to the next available public. Continue the project to the next available. Sure.
He did that very well, didn't he? Do we have a second to Commissioner Rice's motion?
Second.
Vice Chair, I'll get it. Vice Chair Castleberry, second. Call for the vote. Okay, so the motion for reconsideration to the February 5th date has been approved. What that means, as Commissioner Hodge so eloquently stated, you all get to come back again. The developer will be here. He'll present as he did the first time. You will then be able to speak either for or against it, and I think most people are going to be against it. We'll then close the public comment, and we will then go through the same process we did before to vote. Somewhere in there, staff will do their presentation as well. Sorry, staff, kind of overlooked that one. Yes. So, unfortunately, we appreciate your time sincerely for coming out tonight. Feel free and double check to make sure that it's going to be on the calendar for February 5th. There will be a public notice put up on front of the building. It will be on our website. I'm sure you all will correspond and communicate with each other. But February 5th, you can all come back. Before we get to new business, entertain a motion to go ahead and take a quick 10-minute recess.
Is there an
We're good? We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started again. If I can get everyone to take their seats. Use that to hit somebody with. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 13, new business. Special presentation by Deputy Public Works Director Brent Simi.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I've actually got an item that I did. Am I on now? First time I've been at the dais that they've allowed me to come up this close to you all.
How you got through security is beyond us, but that's okay.
So I thank you, and I'm glad I have an audience. Oftentimes people don't get to hear about stormwater, and I realize for the 8 years that I've been here, there's never been a presentation to the commission, let alone the city council, talking about stormwater, which really has two parts, one being quality and one being quantity. Quality speaks to pollution prevention, and quantity addresses flood damage prevention. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can, given that I thought this was just going to be a quiet meeting where there was only a change of command going on, and it got populated with more important items. But again, this is important. So what I want first is you've probably heard terms or seen it in our conditions of approval that talk about MS4. What this is it talks about stormwater, and what we're talking about is water that's after a rainstorm, or it can even be dry weather runoff. It's usually coming across paved surfaces. The city collects it in our drainage system, and it eventually goes into a county-wide system, and ours goes into the Ventura County Watershed Protection District. It used to be called flood control. Now they've got extra words in their title. But runoff comes from many sources, and pollution prevention tries to address it all. Things that we must care about is because it picks up pollutants on its way. It can affect drinking water downstream, especially as you get closer to the coastal plains down in Camarillo. Definitely it's regulated. The federal government and state both regulate runoff because it can affect drinking water and other resources. California manages it through their water resources control boards. Our local one is in Los Angeles. They cover Los Angeles County, which is huge, and Ventura County and many others. And they regulate it through what's called an MS4 permit. So the secret code is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. So that's the 4 S's and why it's MS4. But it has nothing to do with what we would traditionally think of as sewers. If you go back east, storm sewers, sanitary sewers is how they just refer to any kind of pipe under the ground carrying all that. And our permit really started in 2011, just before I came on board. We have to comply because there are fines associated to this. You can see $3,000 to $10,000 a day for a condition that's not changed. A court can apply fines, and the federal government could apply fines. We occasionally have a state inspector just drive around town and pop, there's a fine to a contractor. We have very good inspection. We stay on top of these things, so we're kind of covered with the permit. We're just kind of babysitting in a number of different locations, but it's not something you can hide. There have been lawsuits just for process, but you'll get something like baykeepers who will go against places like Malibu and other communities that are violating and affecting the waters off the coast. So it's a very real thing that we want to protect the city. The problem in responding to it is Prop 218 does not allow the city to generate a tax for it unless we were to go to the property owners, very similar to having a transportation tax. Those generally don't get to the 2/3, so this has never been pursued by really any agency. It's a lot harder to sell the value of stormwater to the typical resident that compared to traffic and congestion and such. So the problem is stormwater is not considered a utility like your water and sewer service. So that means that the city council can't just choose a fee and charge it to everyone. So some of the permit requirements that we have is that they went into place, and you can see the second bullet point, Ventura County, all the stormwater managers put together a technical guidance manual, which is really what your developers will be looking at and what staff evaluates as you see projects, and it's buried in the design and in the conditions of approval you see. New development is triggered when there's 1 acre or more of development going on, and also triggers with square footage of disturbed area. And then redevelopment is also targeted so that if there's 5,000 square foot of a change, and building permits oftentimes are where this starts affecting things. And this is where we try to catch things up with the existing areas. We also have a trash amendment, so city's been putting collector devices within the catch basins to try to get ahead of those things. Some of the dates, this started about 2002 with a very benign sort of permit. It got very aggressive in 2011, and we're expecting 2020 a new permit. It used to be that the board would talk to us and work with the communities. No more. They're just going to tell us, here's your new permit, live by it. So that's going to happen sometime in 2020. I'm not sure what it's going to be involved, but I could be changing a lot of things with developers. The key will be the date they are deemed complete. So the pressure is now going to be on planning to call the applications complete before the effective date of our new permit. Excuse me. So things that we try to do, just to give you a feel for how much water we're trying to deal with. You can see all ways to measure it. The easiest thing is if it's going to rain 3/4 of an inch, we're trying to take care of every bit of that. So up to a trace amount, up to 3/4 inch. Those, I use the term 2-year event. It's an event that happens all the time, every year, that just cleans the streets, and all of a sudden they look really nice. Where did everything go? It went into our municipal storm sewers. So those are the things that we are trying to take care of. The ways that we try to do it, some try infiltration trenches. These don't look the most beautiful, but they're probably the most efficient. Probably won't see those in Southern California because real estate is way too valuable. You could see these more in Midwest or things like that along their highways. Grass filter strips are another thing. We've had those in Simi Valley. I use the word had. Sometimes they were put into front yards of developments and they're gone. There was just a wet lawn and someone said, we need to take care of this, and they filled it in because nothing was ever pursued on it. So having these spread out parcel by parcel has been a little difficult. Increasing in size, then we can move to, say, grassed swales. The city actually has one of these that leads around the police department, and we used that when we expanded the parking lot. Again, you try to use the value of nature to capture debris and such that can be treated, and plus it's amazing how the root zone of vegetation can collect up metals and pollutants and things like that. The difficulty with those are that there's a lot of maintenance. Infiltration basins, those are really nice. Still probably more in the central part of America because it rains all year long. You can kind of keep this little pond looking nice and the vegetation there. The problem is we have to water that all summer long. and we have our California rules to try to reduce water. So it's very difficult to provide that. The other thing is, with an arid area, we have mosquitoes. We don't like to have standing water longer than 72 hours. Otherwise, we'll get mosquito production. So again, a little bit difficult. The next thing that's really hot is pervious pavement. It works really nice. It actually controls the area that you want to get your water down into. Difficulty is you got to vacuum the thing. You'd never think of that, but little fines get stuck at the very top, and all of a sudden you don't see the water working its way through. So it's actually a material that has to have very good vacuuming. You don't want to pressure wash it because you just drive it even further, where it'll plug it up even more. Other opportunities that are used, especially in the coastal areas, you'll maybe hear green streets. These are being promoted a little bit more towards the Ventura area with their climate. They can actually keep their vegetation growing a little bit better during the summer, and so that the roots are heavy in the winter. But for Simi Valley, generally, we're dealing with more of things called proprietary devices. And the device on the left actually takes the flow of water and starts spinning it. So centrifugally, it just tosses out all of the sediment and debris and your floating bottles and all of that into a chamber and doesn't allow it to go ahead. And the petroleum products will float in it. So they can come along each year and actually open up one of the holes on the top, suck out all the debris and clean it up and keep it going again. The one on the right, it's probably a glorified septic tank. You get the water to slow down in the first area, goes through the filters, and then you allow the water to move through the system. Both of these are more expensive and require maintenance, but they're probably easier to accomplish for most development. The other thing is this type of device is used ahead of our detention basins, which generally you have water flowing into and are on the surface, even easier to maintain. However, my next section I'll go in and talk about that a little bit more. We're starting to put detention under the ground so we can utilize the top of the ground and get double purposes. So that's a really rapid explanation of our pollution prevention and the state laws that are in it. So if there's any quick questions at that stage from the commission or thoughts of something, I can fetch more information in the future for you.
Nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Deer in the headlights. And hopefully as the public hears this, it hears, yes, the city is doing something very positive for the community. So the next part is when we talk about stormwater quantity. So I always say, what is an SFHA? I never knew those letters until I came to work here and now became a floodplain manager. So why should I care? So what it involves is our National Flood Insurance Program, and more letters, I just love them, NFIP, this rolls off my lips. So that's the flood insurance program. What that program is when the federal government backs a mortgage, they need to make sure that there's adequate protection, and flood insurance has been a very important one. It used to be back 50 years ago, private insurers covered flood insurance, but they got wiped out when we started getting more of our major events. So the federal government had to come and step in. Oddly as it is, the private sector is actually coming back into the insurance game. So it's changing things. But in any case, NFIP is when you've just bought a house and you're ready to close, and your mortgage company says, you know, you need flood insurance. What? Yeah, $2,000. What? And then they give me a call. So the reason is because there's a special flood hazard area, the SFHA, and that's basically the mapped area at which there's a 1% chance every year of being flooded, and that is mapped on the on maps, and it's the city helps maintain that. It could tell you whether the water is anywhere from 1 to 10 to 12. If you're along the coast, it could be 20 foot deep. but that's what those maps are to do, to basically tell you what your risk is from the quantity of water. Here's a snapshot I took of Simi Valley, and everything that's blue is flood zone. So if you wanted to build in those areas, you've got flood zone requirements. You're paying flood insurance if you've got a backed mortgage. Some of the one that's over on the west side, that's a striped area, that's an area that's supposedly protected by a levee. Kind of spoiler alert, there really isn't a levee. That should never be mapped, and I'm trying to fight to get that taken off. You don't really have to pay extra flood insurance there, but it sure scares people when they want to buy a house and they've just heard of a levee break somewhere. But that gives you an idea. Maybe 15% of the bottomland of the city is in a flood zone. I send notices to, I clean it out, 5,000 different property owners for about 6,000 parcels within the city, or mobile homes. All those people are potentially affected by the mapping. So for me, it's a lot of activity each day even. So that's kind of an example of a floodplain. You can see how it stretches from one side to the other. There's flood fringe. And those are areas that are oftentimes filled. So as you see developers filling their properties, that's where they're able to do that. The very middle part is called a floodway, and that's what we need to protect to make sure the flow does get down the stream. And you can see something that's called a base flood elevation. So those are very important to that we manage. One thing I want to tell everybody is just see those numbers. 26% chance of flooding during the life of a 30-year mortgage. Compare that to fire. The thing is you have a bigger chance of flooding than you do of burning. And people just don't realize it. But that's why it's hard to get flood insurance, is because of that statistic. That's nationwide. That's not necessarily us. But for us, nationwide, it's 20% of flood claims are outside the flood zone. For us, it's 70%. There were a lot of smart people that decided, yeah, I'm not in the zone. It's cheap to be outside the zone. I'll get flood insurance. Sure enough, they got flooded. It's very strange sorts of ways that they get flooded, but they get insured, they get themselves back on their feet, they're good to go. A little quote down at the bottom, turn around, don't drown. Did you know that more people die in their vehicles from a flood than any other way? They just drive where they're not supposed to, walk where they're supposed to. So I tell people, even if there's no chance of a flood here in Simi Valley, if you're visiting Nevada, you're visiting somewhere else, and you see that nice road that you'd like to drive across, please don't do it. When the water goes down, you realize there wasn't even any road there. And that's why people go off the side and lose their lives. So turn around, please don't drown. We care about the NFIP because development creates impervious surfaces, which means it generates more water downstream. And unmitigated, this could cause flooding. So back in the 1980s, the city enacted really stringent regulations that protect us from litigation downstream. There were people getting sued downstream, and the city didn't want to do that. So we put a lot in place that protects the city. So we also have good housekeeping to keep our streams clean. Different things that we encourage people to elevate different things that are at hazard. That doesn't, everybody can flood, so it makes good sense. And we also try reduce the increased building stock at risk by preventing people from substantial improvement in the flood zone. So why we also care is flood insurance and hazard preparedness are the quickest ways for a community to recover quickly after a flood event. But oftentimes people don't know how much flood can hurt them. 1 inch of water will probably cost the typical home in Simi Valley $25,000. Some people don't think about that, but my little house, I've got 5-foot side yards. I've got 2 inches in my backyard that if it fills up, it's coming in my master patio door. if a bag of, say, mulch falls over in the side yard and that water's not coming through, it's going into my house that quick, and that I could be away from town, the wind blows something over. So people need to know and think about how that water could come in. The other thing is our maps always assume everything's working perfectly. You know, a drainage is going to get stuck. Someone's metal shed's going to blow over, get stuck in a pipe, and you were safe, but not anymore. Now you could potentially get flooded. So those are things we try to communicate to people. So we've enforced our flood guidelines for many, many years. One of the things we've also done is entered in a community rating system. So I am the community rating coordinator. And what that does is a program which your presentation, your opportunity to listen to me is scoring us points in that program, which is giving our community 25% discount on flood insurance. So you're part of that. So thank you. And community for sitting here and listening to this. You're helping your neighbor who is paying flood insurance to get an automatic 25%. The other thing that we're doing is reducing storm flows to less than what was there even before. So the example I have is that we call it a 100-year storm. The county's standard would be is reduce your impacts of new permeable, impervious surfacing to what was there before. We say even take it down to where it was less than a 10-year storm there before. 10-year storms generally are what fits in our gutters. That's about a 10-year storm. If it fits in the gutter and it's full, that's a 10-year storm. We can handle that. So after 30 years of development, if you were to look at the flow at Madera, it's unchanged. With 40% more development in the city, that's what our detention policy has done. That volume eventually gets down to the Pacific Ocean. It just is tamed. It stays within the channel. So what we have to be concerned about is if we don't maintain our standards, we'll lose our community rating system, which is saving $300,000 a year to our community. If we also drop the NFIP standards, then our community would not be able to get federally backed insurance. We would have to rely completely on the private sector for our insurance. So just a quick tutorial on SFHA, what the zones are. You can see there's A, E, O, HS, AHs. So this is what a flood map looks like. The section going down the middle, which if I get my pointer, there's something called floodway. That's where the stream needs to go. This is the arroyo about where Tapple Canyon comes into play. So all of that area in the middle, I just lost my pointer, that's floodway. You can see lines across it. They've actually identified how deep the water is moving along. And then up at the top, you'll see an area here. It's called AH. Apparently the water ponds there, and it says it's elevation 889 feet. So if your house is at 888 feet, you're underwater. And then you can see all the water that's coming down from the top to the left side is the Tapple Canyon. Tells you that that's spilling out, and it's in a zone that's affecting individuals. And then you've also got floodwaters that's trying to get into the arroyo from the south that's getting stalled. So that's what a map would look like. And then down at the bottom, it's AO, which would be 3 feet, which would mean if you stood on your curb, it would be at your waist. And so if your house isn't at least 3 foot above the curb, you're flooded out there. So that's kind of what a map would look like. The concerns are is that the maps were generated 30 years ago with very conservative data. What I'm finding with most engineers affording their most for developers, so we're finding that the flood zone really isn't there. We're vaporizing it right and left. We're starting pretty much from Madera, working here. The Land Sea project identified about 500 parcels that could be taken out if they were to band together. There's another project on the north side, the Murphy tract area. They're working on their plan. When they get that approved, it's going to take about 60 businesses out of the floodplain. So as much as I'm talking about floodplains, our map is a little conservative. The difficulty we have is that it's going to be about $1 million to get the new map done. Federal government is promising me, because I've been in their face for so long, that I'm next up in 2023 with the dribbles and drabs as it comes through, and so we'll probably be done in about 10 years after that. So I have a task to do. You're not going to get rid of me for another 15 years. So I want that map done right, because I can argue to people, if I've got a correct map, to say you're still at risk because this is only when it works perfectly. But right now, our community is paying $1 million to the federal government each year that it really shouldn't be, and I'd like to get that changed. So the other thing that we can do in between is that the government does allow us things like a letter of map amendment, and what that involves is you get your surveyor to do an elevation and show my house is 2 feet above the curb and the water's only 1 foot above the curb. We've got hundreds of those, probably 400 properties in our community have those, and so they've got out of flood insurance. The letters of map revision are very aggressive engineering tasks, and every developer has gone through those and accomplished that. But again, as I was showing, over $1 million to get remapped. So things we do, though, is we avoid putting fill in the floodplain unless you can prove with engineering you can. We also make sure, this is a new higher regulation that I was able to put in recently, is if you do put in that fill, you do not affect your neighbor. Your neighbor is not going to be paying higher flood insurance because you raised it too high. Right now is if the water is a ½ inch deep, the federal government, a ½ foot deep, they round it up to 1. So that means your neighbor could be flooded even if there's only 6 inches of water. But let's say it's 5 now. If the developer comes along and changes it, all of a sudden you've now gone to a little over 5. That means now they're going to call you in a flood zone. So I try to keep it down to the point where no one gets added to a flood zone because of the developer. The only time you know about that is well after the development's been approved by your commission. They built it, they filed the map. Oops, I'm sorry, your neighbor just got in the flood zone. That's the wrong time for a neighbor to learn that. So we make sure that that is thoroughly vetted out before you even get to see this application before you. We build basins on property, and also we have regional basins that have been built by the Ventura County Watershed Protection District. Again, here would be a typical basin in the old times, a hole in the ground. Sometimes becomes an eyesore if they're around certain regional malls that will not be mentioned by name at this point in time. But ownership sometimes doesn't care about them because they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, but they can be big problems. I've been moving more people to using underground detention because you can build them strong enough, you can park on top of them. You can have a dog park, as in one project you approved recently in the Bellwood area. Multi-use sort of features. So we're moving to those kind of detention structures very successfully. So I just wanted to give you an idea of a lot of this stuff that's inside those applications that you see on a map that you might not really notice what a little symbol might be on the map, but it's all part of water quality and water quantity control that Public Works has been involved in for the last number of years and hope to continue to do so. And thank you for helping to support our CRS program and a 25% discount worth $300,000 to your community. That's the end of my presentation. Any last questions on?
I want to thank you for doing this presentation. I'd love to see more presentations similarly informing us of things that we see in our reports, but we may not always know the technical background. The one thing I did want to ask, is there any way the city could speed up that process that would take 15 years to save people a bunch of money?
Make it an act of Congress.
Okay. Can't do that, so it's no.
Congress No, actually, it's true. We've had things happen because a congressperson says, this does not look right, give me a response to that. And FEMA would have to respond and say, yeah, we would agree. And then an act of Congress would say, no, we need to make sure this money gets to the Simi Valley quicker. There are many areas in the country that have no mapping. So we've got to balance what we're doing, and there's only a certain amount of money. But recently, the House was going to support $263 million towards mapping this year. The budget finally got approved, and the House was only going to do 100, or the Senate 100. So, letter writing campaign. Well, mine was part of it, and we, as a body of people, got Congress to agree to the higher amount. But spread that over an entire nation, it's going to disappear real quick. All we want is our own little million. I just need to get someone to be agitated enough to make it go to Congress, and that's where things actually happen. So our electeds are the ones that I'm trying to agitate diplomatically.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Moving on, agenda item 13B, public hearing. This is the time and place for the public hearing on the consideration of conditional use permit CUP-S-825. Are there any ex parte communications to report? May we have an oral report on this matter by staff?
All right. Thank you, Chairman Mann. Again, this is a conditional use permit to renovate an existing office building into a coffee house with a drive-through window and to vacate a remnant equestrian easement, and a determination that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. The site has a general plan designation of general commercial and is currently zoned commercial plan development. It's developed with a real estate office that's generally vacant, slightly used, but generally vacant. And this is an example of our general plan land use policy to redevelop underutilized parcels. Senior Planner Verna Metsu is present tonight and will present the staff report of the proposed development. Vern?
Thank you. Okay, so as the director has just said, this renovation is an excellent example of our general plan policy to revitalize underused commercial properties. In this case, we have an all but vacant real estate building being repurposed as a coffee house that could become a neighborhood gathering place for surrounding residents while maintaining neighborhood quality. The applicant, Tate & Associates, requests approval of conditional use permit CUPS 825 to renovate an existing office building into that coffee house that is half the size of the existing building, develop a new drive-through window and queuing lane, and make minor changes to the existing parking lot while saving as many of the trees as possible on this heavily wooded 0.69 acre lot. The proposed coffee house development is characterized by reducing the existing office building by half to 2,037 square feet with a 256 square foot open covered patio at the entry. Building a new drive-through facility with a 200-foot long queuing lane that exceeds the 150-foot long queuing lane requirement, and having an additional informal queuing capacity in the parking lot where the driveway is wide enough to accommodate both queuing vehicles and parking traffic, providing 22 parking spaces, which exceeds the 9 space requirement, and also providing a driveway design that allows vehicles to circle the parking lot without entering the street. And retaining as many mature trees as possible, replacing hazardous trees, and planting 15 48-inch box trees. The applicant will also deposit approximately $67,000 to the city's tree replacement fund. The proposed coffee house would be a one-story building that uses contemporary architecture such as simplified rectangles and circles. These shapes are strikingly punctuated by a line of 8-foot-long cantilevered beams that run from the patio seating area to the drive-through window. Neighborhood compatibility is provided by maintaining extensive on-site trees, containing traffic circulation and drive-through queuing vehicles on-site, separating the building activity area from the western residence by 126 feet, raising the western masonry wall to a 6-foot height, and improving the 10-foot wide landscape tree buffer. In addition, the Stearns and Barnard Street intersection will continue to operate at level of service A. Finally, the applicant requests a Planning Commission recommendation to the city manager to allow the vacation and quitclaim of a city-owned 10-foot wide equestrian easement that runs along the west property line from Barnard Street to Highway 118. This easement is currently not developed for an equestrian trail or any other public purpose, and the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District's Director of Planning and Maintenance has determined that this segment has no value as an equestrian or multi-purpose trail. Based on the findings in the staff report dated January 22nd, 2020, staff recommends that CUPS 825 be approved and that the subject equestrian trail easement be recommended for vacation and quitclaim by the city manager. Thank you. Staff is available for questions.
Okay, perfect. Do any commissioners have any questions of staff based on the presentation? So the developer first? Okay.
Within the staff report, we have this page here, you can read off the script up there.
Right. Would the applicant like to present the project?
Good evening. My name is Greg Fick with Tate and Associates. I'm representing the developer Condor Commercial for this. I wanted to thank Commission and staff for taking the time to review this project tonight and getting us to where we are. We're very excited to be here. We have reviewed all the conditions of approval and don't have any comments on them and are fine with the conditions as stated. And also just wanted to mention that the proposed tenant is Starbucks and wanted to introduce Jim Delahoy. He can say a quick word.
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I appreciate it. My name is Jim Delahoy. I am the internal real estate development manager for Starbucks that did this deal with the developer. We actually have a fully executed lease on the property and are prepared to move forward as soon as it can be constructed by the developer. I just wanted to add that over the years, we've gotten a number of requests from the community that, and we recognize that we're heavy on the west side of town and we're very underserved on the eastern side of Simi Valley. So we're proud that after a few years, we've finally been able to land in a location on the east side. I attended the first of the 2 neighborhood council meetings and where we received 10-0 unanimous approval support at both meetings, and was very happy to hear very vocal support for a coffee house and specifically for a Starbucks. So we're very primary benefit, of course, is to deliver a home Starbucks store to the eastern side of town. And we also think there's going to be a secondary benefit with the relief of some of our very popular locations to the west on First Street in the mall parking lot, as well as our Cochrane and Galena drive-through as well. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak this evening. We appreciate your support for the project. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, is there anyone in the chamber wishing to be heard on this matter? I have several cards. We'll start with those that do not wish to speak. O'Neill McInnes is in support, does not wish to speak. Annika Barbarossa does not wish to speak, is in support. John Indiana Hertz does not wish to speak and are in support. I have several cards that wish to speak. Sanjay Persai Percy wishes to speak.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, I definitely support this initiative, but I just want to bring up some things. I'm glad the applicant is here as well. I own the property right next to the Starbucks on Bernard Street. Couple of things I want to bring up is I'm glad that it's going to be occupied with a commercial facility there. It's not being maintained right now. So one of the concerns that I want to bring up here, which you might already have thought about, is the traffic. Because during the holidays, especially November and December, I've seen the traffic backing out of the in and out close to the Stearns and Bernard intersection. So with Starbucks coming in there might be something. So we might have to think about how to ease the traffic there. That's one thing I want to bring it up. The next thing I want to bring up here is the Bernard Street. I heard a couple of times here today, it's not maintained at all. So one of the biggest challenges that we have since the time we bought the property there, it's the flooding part of it. I mean, right now from the pavement or of the building, whenever there's heavy rain, it drags mud into the gutters in front of our property, and it fills up very fast, and all of a sudden the water comes into our garage, and we had so many instances of that with 3 or 4 rains that we received. So I'm really concerned about it, but I did see the plan the gentleman shared with me, saying that it will be eased a little bit. It won't solve our problem, but it will be eased, which is really good to hear about it. The next thing I want to bring up is there are huge palm trees there. So during the season, you can see the seed pods and also the leaves falling on our property. They basically block the rooftop gutters, and also it's a fire hazard for us. So we have tried to remediate that, but with no response from whoever is owning it currently. I mean, we couldn't get the message across very well. And one other problem is the planters are raised right now. They're connected to the retaining wall. So there was an instance where we had seen the water was running for half a day. We couldn't get hold of who was owning the building or how to get through. Finally, I called the city, and I'm glad city really came and shut down the water there. So it helped. Again, all of this, what happens is these are the problems that seep into our garage, and we have come to a point wherein we don't know how to solve that. So I want to bring up all these things here, so at least whoever is doing the construction part of it would take into consideration some of these things. So I'm not asking them to solve my problems, but I just want to bring up those points here. I think that's about it, my challenges. So
thank you very much.
Share that. Thank you.
Sam Rafi.
Yes. Good evening, and congratulations, Mr. Mann, on new position.
Thank you.
Also, my name is Sam Rafi. I own the property on Stearns and Bernard. We had our real estate office there for a while, and when originally that office building was built, it was built as a real estate office. But it changed so many hands. That's even people that they live in the neighborhood, they couldn't see the sign of the real estate company. So I've been living here in Simi Valley for close to 37 years. My kids were little kids. But when they grow up, when they were little, they went to Big Springs, and then all of a sudden to Simi High. And most of the kids that they live on this side, especially the Texas tract, they don't love to be drove to high school. They love to walk there. That's, and before I owned that building, I owned the 76 station there. And I was surprised that that many kids. So what happens, I had so many proposals on that property, unbelievable. We had one with the for a market, and I was thinking about the kids. I thought if we open a market in here, first of all, be homeless, the boxes, the trash around the littering, and I don't think, and especially the kids that are 18 or on their way home, they are gonna stop by that market and buy liquor and buy. So I don't think that will be a good idea. To lease it to a market that has. Then I have somebody came and they want to put a flooring business between tile and carpets and things like this. And one side they want to make it like a showroom, and the other side is going to make it like a warehouse. And I was thinking, I don't want to lease it to somebody that's going to close the business, like the gentleman said. I mean, on this side of Simi, I mean, especially for that location, the traffic is really slow. So I said no. When the developer for Starbucks approached me, I said to him, let me sleep on it for a couple nights. And I thought that would be an awesome way to do a Starbucks in that area. I live on the east side of Simi, and I always go to Coffee Beans. I have to park by Vans. I have to park my car, go down, wait in line, and so I thought that would be perfect. That's why before, I said yes, I made sure that it is good for the community that we live in. Because I live in Simi Valley, I work in Simi Valley, I raise my kids in Simi Valley. That's so to me, I know everybody care about this town, but I do the same thing. That's so please try to understand where we are coming from, and I think it's going to be a good addition to the east side of Simi Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim Delaney? Oh. Anna, I'm sorry, Verchinik? Is Anna here? Anna filled out a card that she wishes to speak and is in opposition. Okay. I have no other cards. Anybody else in the chamber wish to be addressed or heard on this matter? Close public comments?
I can respond.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Close public comments now, or no? So are there any comments from staff regarding statements made during the public hearing?
None.
Would the applicant like to respond to any and all comments regarding statements made during the public hearing?
Sure. Obviously, we'll be a good neighbor to all the neighbors as part of the project. And also want to note that we do have a condition that requires it's C7 for the lifetime of this permit. Trees must be thinned and as defined by the Tree Care Industry Association. So essentially, we're required to maintain all the trees on our site. So that's one thing. And then our traffic study does indicate that all the levels of service for all the streets that were studied remain at the existing level of service. So there aren't any traffic impacts for this project. And the queuing certainly works as well for this project as well. So.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. We'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Are there any comments or questions from members of the Planning Commission? Gentlemen.
Sure. My wife is going to love this project, but I'll be honest, the thing that I like the most about this project is the stacking. There's plenty of room for the cars. One of the things I hate about some of the other Starbucks is the stacking backs up into parking lots and stuff, and here you'll still be able to go around the parking lot. So it does create what I think is probably enough stacking for this. And as Mr. Rafi pointed out, yeah, a lot of kids walk up that way from the high school. They go up to In-N-Out and stuff, and now I know they're going to go to In-N-Out, and then they're going to go to Starbucks before they walk back. So I think this is a good project and a good location, and
I'm also pretty happy that so few people from Barnard Street showed up. I appreciate you coming here, sir, and with your concerns. And I hope they keep those palm trees thin for you. So anyway, but that's it for my comments. So.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and echo what Commissioner Rice said. I'm very happy. I live on the East End. This will be my new Starbucks. And it'll alleviate some of the traffic to the one at Galena because my whole family would go to this one. Beyond that, I'm very happy that we're going to see increased tax revenue. I think a Starbucks is perfect because it's so close to Simi High School. If I was still at Simi High, it's been a few years, but if I was still there, I'd definitely be frequenting the Starbucks after school. So that's something that makes me very happy. The only thing I would have liked to see added, which I was going to add as a condition, but I've now been informed that the intersection of Stearns and Bernard is actually a Caltrans intersection, so we don't govern it, but Continental crosswalks a zebra print because of the increased pedestrian traffic we're likely to see crossing the street on Stearns. It's something I would encourage staff to look at in future projects, is making sure when we have increased pedestrian traffic that we're taking the adequate measures to ensure the safety of our pedestrians and our bicyclists here in town. But that being said, because Caltrans governs that intersection, I do not want to add that as a condition to this project.
Commissioner Hodge.
I have no comments.
I'm sorry?
I have no comments.
No comments.
Oh, actually, I do. I wish it would have been a coffee bean and tea leaf, but that's just personal preference. It's a fine project.
My only comment, I actually remember when Forrest Olson built that building because my father was real estate manager of that office. So I spent many years as a kid in that office. So it's nice to see it's being renovated, repurposed for something as great as the Starbucks. Play nice with the neighbors. Obviously, there's some concerns on the trees and some of the issues. All I can say is just play nice with the neighbors, and they'll play nice with you, and life will be good. With that said, may I have a reading of the resolution?
Resolution number 0 SVPC 012020, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Simi Valley approving conditional use permit number CUPS 825 and the determination that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
The chair will now entertain a motion.
I move to adopt a resolution approving CUPS 825.
Motion made by Commissioner, I'll get it, Rice. May I have a second?
Second.
Second made by Commissioner Hodge. Call for the vote.
Nope, no reset.
All right, let's do it again.
Okay, everyone's blinking.
Got it?
The motion passes. The appeal period for CUP-S-825 is 14 calendar days. That's it. Go to the next item. Congratulations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This is a time and place set for public hearing on the consideration of Z-S-769 and SP-S-9, Amendment Number 6, and the determination of the amendment are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. Are there any ex parte communications to the report? Sorry.
I received several emails from various constituents in town concerned about this ordinance. I replied to acknowledge receipt to each one and encourage them to attend the public hearing.
May we have an oral report on this matter by staff?
Thank you, Chairman Mann. Thank you, Chairman Mann. This item was it's regarding off-street parking, but very specifically, we're going to use the reference to recreational vehicles because what happened a couple years ago, there was some enforcement activity that was triggered around the city that generated a lot of consternation with the community. So this was presented to the City Council, and it's been at staff. We've been to the neighborhood councils twice, and this issue is now evolved to get to the planning commission for a potential code amendment. So Senior Planner Sean Gibson is here tonight, and he'll provide an overview and a detailed presentation of any proposed amendments that we may be considering tonight. Sean?
Good evening, everyone. At the February 12th, 2018 City Council meeting, a large group of concerned residents addressed the City Council regarding recent RV parking violations on yards of single-family residences. As a result, the City Council requested a review of RV parking requirements on single-family properties, as well as seek neighborhood council input. At the same time, the City Council paused non-health and safety enforcement of RV parking violations while this review is taking place. At the follow-up City Council meeting a year later on February 11th, 2019, staff presented its findings resulting from the all four neighborhood council meetings held in 2018 and requested council direction. After discussing the item, the City Council directed staff to prepare proposed amendments to the development code to allow for additional rear yard parking on residential properties for both typical and larger sized lots with a permit requirement. In addition, the City Council desired to maintain surfacing requirements, i.e. concrete, for the parking areas, streamline the entitlement process for commercial and industrial zoned RV storage facilities, and expand those RV storage options for commercial industrial properties. There is not necessarily a City Council consensus to increase parking in the front yard. On the screen now, you see the current rules for parking on single-family properties. Depicted in the shaded areas, we'll start with the rear yard, is the parking is only allowed within an approved garage or carport in the rear yard or on the driveway leading to the garage or carport in that rear yard. In addition, parking is allowed on the driveway leading to your garage in the front yard, and also a 10-foot strip of land adjacent to the front driveway leading to that garage. On the right-hand side is an example of a curved driveway leading into the garage, the 10-foot wide parking strip next to that driveway. In addition, you could park on the sides of the house, left and right-hand sides of the house as shown here. Parking is not allowed in this front yard area, which is intended for landscaping, a minimum of 50% landscaping. Now, in response to the City Council direction, staff has proposed the amendments to allow additional parking in the rear yard. And what we came up with is that the proposed rear yard parking amendment would allow for uncovered rear yard parking up to 400 square feet for lots less than 1 acre, or 800 square feet for lots 1 acre or more. Now, this square footage is equivalent to either a 2-car or 4-car garage size piece of land. This revision does not limit the number of vehicles that could be parked in this area, but rather just this area where the vehicles may be parked on. You could get 2 very small cars or 1 RV in this area as well, as an example. There are various provisions to allow for the rear yard parking that was proposed. And one, you must have an approved curb cut and driveway access from the front yard or street. The parking area must be concrete paved. Combined with all other structures, the rear yard parking must not cover more than 40% of the required rear yard, and a zoning clearance and/or encroachment permit will be required. In addition, suggested provisions include the rear yard parking area must be screened by a 6-foot tall fence or wall. The gate setback on the side yard applies. The parking in the rear yard must be set back 3 feet from the side and rear property lines. And if access to the rear yard is from the front yard, you can only access the side of the house where the 10-foot wide parking strip is permitted. This is an example of a possible location where the rear yard parking could be located. Now, if you recall, right now you can only park in a garage or carport. This could be the same situation, but just assume there's no more garage and carport in the rear yard. Also, as I mentioned, you would not be able to access the rear yard on this side of the front yard because it crosses over the landscaped area. And albeit you could still park here, but we don't want to exacerbate that issue to access your rear yard. So we would suggest only allowing access to the rear yard through this movement here off your front parking area and this side of the house. On the right-hand side is a real-life example of a house with a driveway next to the garage, a 9 to 10 foot wide access way on the side of the house, and potentially rear yard parking could be accommodated here with approved access from the front street. This is another example of a rear yard parking area. Perhaps this could come from a side street frontage. In this case, the parking space would probably have to be set back 20 feet from this side property line because we do have a gate setback requirement of 20 feet, and most people want to see a gate there. This is kind of what you see for a side yard access to a rear yard. Here on the left-hand side, you see where the RV is parked in the rear yard currently. This would not be permitted under the current code. The right-hand side, number one, there's a lack of a driveway approach from the street, so that'd be a first requirement. If this were to be enacted, we would require a encroachment permit to put in a drive approach. And in this case, the gate here is not permitted under the current code, so that's something that may want to be looked at. This image shows an example of possibly 1 acre size properties where the 800 square feet of rear yard parking could be permitted. As an example here, there's a paved area. You could pave your rear yard as much as you want, but we'd actually define a parking area. And suppose if this were 800 square feet, you could park 1 or 2 recreational vehicles or 6 or 8 Mini Coopers if you desired, or a boat, an RV, or a trailer. These are all similar vehicles when we talk about off-street parking. Commercial vehicles like dump trucks and trucks over 1 ton, usually for construction related, are not part of that off-street parking mix. However, in this case, some rear yards have parking issues where the parking area is more than 800 square feet. This is not allowed in our code currently and would be a violation. And perhaps there's an access issue which does not comply with the layout of the proposed ordinance as we've written it. It does not have paved access. It comes off the opposite side of the front yard. And there's other various issues out there. This is an image that raises an issue brought up by Neighborhood Council number 3. Neighborhood Council number 3 suggested an option for front yard parking on the opposite side of the garage if parking could not be met on the garage side. In this case, there is room to park on this side of the garage. In many cases, there's no place to park on the side of the garage. They maybe only have 5 feet, so you can't park a vehicle there. So they want the option to park on the opposite side of the street if there's just no way to park a vehicle on the currently approved side. Second, sometimes there is no access to the rear yard on the approved side of the garage. They may want to access the rear yard, in this case on the right-hand side where they can get through. Approving this consideration could exacerbate the front yard parking issue. If you pave a way to get to your backyard, you might want to continue to park in the front yard, and that could be something not desirable or desirable depending on how you look at it. This is a similar issue for corner lots. Right now, there's instances where people use the accessibility ramp at the corner to access their parking. This is not an approved access ramp for vehicles. However, in this case, the motorhome is parked in the side yard, which is permitted. It's just accessing it is questionable, and adding to the rear yard parking scenario would have to be looked at. As the second and third components to the City Council direction are minor text amendments related to our commercial and industrial zones in an effort to promote development of commercial RV storage facilities. The first amendment is to allow a staff level approval for any sized indoor RV storage facility. Currently, anything over 10,000 square feet requires a conditional use permit to be heard by the Planning Commission. However, RV storage facilities may tend to be larger, and the amendment would allow a staff level approval by the director through a public hearing to allow any size indoor RV storage facility within an existing building as an incentive to maybe encourage indoor RV storage within the city. The second amendment updates the area of town known as the Brandeis-Bardin Institute Specific Plan Area, located near the south end of Tapo Canyon Road and Guardian Street, to allow RV storage facilities, indoor or outdoor, within that business park zone, subject to a conditional use permit. This depicts areas on the left-hand side where RV lots are currently allowed with a conditional use permit, the various zones, various commercial and industrial zones. The BP zone is proposed. And on the right-hand side are zones where they're not allowed. However, these zones where they're not allowed may not be desirable for RV facilities, such as the mixed-use zone, residential zones, the commercial office zone, and some of the main shopping center zones. While we don't have a current application for RV storage facility, this is forward-thinking to possibly allow additional locations in the city to help alleviate the storage problem within the city. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission consider these proposed amendments and make the appropriate recommendations to the City Council. And staff is available for questions.
Do any commissioners have any questions of staff?
Quickly. Mr. Gibson, do we have any, have there been any applicants seeking to build indoor storage facilities?
I'm not aware of any current applicants.
Has there ever been so this whole thing about adding the administrative approval for such properties of any size, that's essentially just an incentive. It has nothing to do with any pending market request or you know, any developer coming forward and sort of, or knocking at their. Well, let me ask you a better question, because I think I know what that answer is. Has there been neighboring cities? Are you aware of any of our neighboring cities that have had these kinds of applications or the text amendment? Geez, I want to know if the text amendments that we're asking for, that you're proposing rather, are consistent or similar to those in neighboring cities.
So the commercial industrial provisions, those are just incentives to encourage development in the city. We did not survey cities on the commercial industrial provisions. On the residential components, yeah, we did some research as far as parking locations, where it's allowed in the front yard, side yard, rear yards, and it's across the board. Most cities don't allow front yard parking. Some cities allow rear yard parking, and there's various provisions. We surveyed some cities in Ventura County and whether they allowed rear yard and under what circumstances. But I do have a handout I could provide to you just to give a quick overview.
Yeah, I like the residential component of what this provides. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is there's a dearth of light industrial zone, light industrial building in town, and there's it's a very low a vacancy rate, and we've heard from persons in the past, come before us and talk about the need for those kinds of space, that kind of space, and the benefits of that kind of space to the economy, to the employment base, so people don't have to travel out of town, to go to work in decent paying jobs. And using that space for RV storage seems like a very low-end sort of opportunity for employment. I realize that there's a need for it because of, we want to provide opportunities for people to park those kinds of vehicles in other places other than their neighborhoods. So I appreciate the push and the pull on that, and that's why I was asking the question regarding, are other cities doing this? Is it successful for them? I'm just a little dubious about sort of taking away the opportunity for Planning Commission input on some of these kinds of projects because of this concern we have about light industrial space and the very low percentage of vacancy.
Commissioner Hodge, I would add, I've worked at 6 different cities. Most recently, I worked in Santa Paula, and anecdotally, I can tell you that RV storage facilities are typically in light industrial or industrial zones, not so much in commercial. What we could find in our city is that we have some problematic properties. They have an earthquake fault going through them. They have a high water table. They have something that's the reason they're vacant today is it's for some site condition, and that this might be a use on those difficult to develop properties. It doesn't really matter if there's an earthquake fault underneath it because it could be outdoor storage, for example. We do have a few RV storage facilities in town. The vacancy rates are very low. They fill up very quickly, even when they do just open up. And we do have some indoor and outdoor, but that's kind of the only things I can tell you as far as what I've known from other cities is they're generally allowed in light industrial zones, and we do have some problematic properties that, if nothing else, these uses could occur out there.
Yeah, well, I realize that the Planning Commission Planning Commissioners have the opportunity to, when we get notice of administrative hearing and there's administrative approval, we have the right to bring it, two commissioners can bring it to the council, to the commission. So I guess that would probably assuage my concerns on that. But that is something that I am concerned about because we do have a very low percentage of currently available light industrial, and there are some substantial benefits to light industrial, to the employment base and to the overall economy of the city. Okay.
I just had a question. You're specifically using the word concrete. What about like landscaping paver, or not landscape, driveway pavers and things like that? Would those be allowed?
So the current rules allow for dustless surface, like particularly gravel, for example, for non-motorized vehicles in the rear yard. That certainly something that could be added to the proposal, and by default we could also traffic grade interlocking pavers, which we would also currently allow for regular parking in front yards. We want to expand that word concrete. I don't have a particular opposition to that addition.
Because my concern is I understand the concrete or a non-porous surface when we're talking about a motorhome that might leak oil or something like that, but on a regular travel trailer or something like that that doesn't have oil or something like that, I don't know why that would necessarily be something we would have to have. So that was my question. So thank you.
I have a couple. So right now, if a resident is using the side yard parking spot that is not connected to their driveway or their garage, are they required to put in a curb cutout?
There is not a requirement to put in a curb cut to a non-permitted parking area when they're parked on a...
No, I meant the side parking that currently is permitted under our ordinance.
So I will show you here, parking on the side yard. No, we don't go look for side yard parking, so there's not an explicit requirement to get an encroachment permit to that because we don't offer permits to park in this side yard. So driveways have been allowed in the past through permits, but it's not currently, we're not going back to require driveway approaches to this side yard parking on this side of the street.
Okay, so that ties in with my one of my other questions is, are residents held liable if they damage the sidewalk trying to get an RV up to that side yard?
They could be, but enforcement and proof is another situation.
Okay, that's one of my concerns, is putting the burden on other taxpayers for people's recreational vehicles, that if they damage the sidewalk, it's then taxpayers on the hook to cover the sidewalk repairs, because the city has a duty to repair those sidewalks.
Right. Yes, I'm sorry. In this instance, within this proposed amendment, any zoning clearance, any approval, if we adopted a rear yard parking provision, would specifically require the curb cut to that, and the zoning clearance would cover that along with the encroachment permit. That's how we would address the new portion of the ordinance.
Okay. So I believe I read in the staff report that if this is adopted, there's going to be a proposed educational period before we start enforcement actions against people. Is that correct?
We have our code enforcement manager, Nancy Cole, here today. She may be able to answer a couple of those questions for you more specifically.
Okay.
Hi, Nancy Cole, Code Compliance Manager. When you're talking about an outreach program, it's definitely something we would do. I mean, once City Council affirmed or modified in the text, then we would definitely do an outreach where we would go to we'd go out. We could do door hangers, flyers and utility bills, speak at neighborhood council, speak at community organizations, and it could take 3 to 6 months maybe to do a good overview for everybody, to give them a chance to adapt
Perfect.
to anything that's different. Or
No, perfect. That's exactly what I was asking. I think the next one might actually be for you as well. Okay. Is there a typical fine for non-compliance with these sort of things? Is it like a fix-it ticket, or how do we go about enforcing our code on the?
Well, on any of the codes we enforce, we always try for voluntary compliance. We give a first notification letter, and if there's no response, we will send a notice and order, a little bit more firm, requesting compliance by a certain date. If there's no compliance, no progress, no working with the resident, then we would issue a civil fine of $100. Fines can be issued per day per violation, and they can also be escalated to $200 and $500 a day.
Okay.
All right.
And then the last one, which I think is for Sean, if we are including I believe I read this in a neighborhood council recommendation or an idea, was that if we issue a zoning clearance, is it possible to have a requirement that we mandate an inspection of the backyard after it's constructed to ensure compliance? And if that's required, is there a benefit to staff for that?
The staff report addresses that somewhat, and it's not really something we could go for.
Okay.
I mean, from a legal standpoint, it's very difficult enough to get on the property, and to try to condition it, I don't think we'll get very far.
Okay.
There's just so many scenarios it probably would not work.
All right, perfect. Thank you. That's it for me.
I have a couple of questions. Under the current code, is there a different surface allowed for parking a motorhome or something with a motor as compared to a trailer, i.e. concrete, asphalt versus gravel?
Yes, the dust-free surface, gravel situation for trailers, non-motorized vehicles, boats, horse trailers, just non-motorized vehicles could be the gravel. The concrete surface is for the motorized vehicles, cars, trucks, motorhomes, motorcycles.
But in the proposed amendment, you want to make everything on concrete, or are you going to allow trailers in the back to still be on gravel?
That could be at the Planning Commission and City Council discretion. I'm suggesting concrete to be straightforward, so we don't have to try to go inspect after the fact and decide if they moved in a motorhome after they proposed a trailer initially. So if you go straight with concrete, then we're done. We don't have to argue over if they start with gravel and then they bought a motorhome later, then decide not to put in concrete. So it can just open up a can of worms. But either way, you know, it's something you can make amendments to our suggested standards and go a variety of ways to get there.
Okay. In one of the photos that you showed, and I can't remember which one, you actually had a trailer on the left-hand side where there was a garage and a motorhome on the right-hand side.
Correct.
Under our current code, that's illegal, correct? Correct. That's not approved.
Correct.
Okay.
And I can tell you from, that's the number one type of complaint. There's a lot of people that is, not every property is created equally, obviously. Right. You know, some are large, small, some can't get to the side yard, some can't get to the rear yard, some can't afford the homeowners to store it in an RV storage facility, so they've kind of created these paths. We, as planning, you know, we allow some hardscape in the front yard. We do try to maintain a 50% landscaping component. The goal is not to overpave the front yard, but clearly that is something that is occurring. It's what triggered a lot of the violations. The city council, when they first directed this us to take this back to the neighborhood councils and eventually here to the planning commission, they didn't necessarily ask us to change the code to allow that, but it did come up in neighborhood council 3 where in that area of town people wanted to see if they could, you know, have that allowed. Other neighborhood councils did not support that code amendment.
Was it even questioned in the other neighborhood councils about the alternative parking for the front yard parking?
No. Everything I just said just now, I think I said the same story.
Okay.
You know, how this evolved, how we got to where we're at. Other ones did not request it specifically, but neighborhood council 3 did.
And I don't know if you would have the answer to this question. Of the 34 complaints involving the parking violations, is there a certain percentage of those that would be in the front yard parking that we would need the alternative parking to alleviate, or are most of these on rear yard parking?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Of the 34 complaints involving parking violations for on-site parking requirements, are those primarily side yard, backyard, or are they parking illegally in the front yard like that one photo depicted?
I would say it's pretty even across the board, except for the larger properties. You have a lot more rear yard parking because they're bigger areas. The more tract type of houses that are closer together, you see more of the front yard across from the regular driveway.
Okay.
I would see more of that.
The other question I had is, in one of the photos, it showed a house probably in the Cadota Fig area that had like 10 trailers or motorhomes parked behind it. Assuming they don't have the permit for an RV storage, that whole thing is illegal as we currently are, right?
Most likely, if there's a garage leading to if there's a driveway leading to a garage, some of that may be allowed, but a lot of that, it's outside storage, not in a garage, and it's definitely not allowed in the rear yard.
Okay.
And the other issue, you know, when we see all those vehicles, are they all registered to the owner of that property?
Right.
Or are they friends' vehicles? And these are things that, you know, sometimes we look at a little house and we see one vehicle there, it's not a question.
Right.
But when you see these large properties with many, that issue does become a concern.
So is there a requirement that, because I'm assuming if you're having your friend's store, is that allowed or not allowed? Because in theory, if you're not charging the money or may not be running a business, or do we really get into that, or how far down this rabbit hole do we chase it?
No, right now, I mean, rear yard parking is not allowed unless it's leading to a garage or carport in the rear yard. Like I said, some of these larger properties, we are aware that some of those larger properties are parking their trailers back there, and it is illegal at this time.
Okay.
Yes.
And even if we make this amendment, in theory, it would still be illegal if they exceeded the 800 square feet, if it's a property over an acre.
Yes.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, well, we're going to open the public testimony, the hearing. Is there anybody in the chamber wishing to be heard on this matter? I have several comments. We'll start with Matt Doris, followed by Carolyn Rube, and then Richard, you're last, sorry.
Hi. Can you pass those around? Those are already, by the way, included in the report, so you might have seen those. Okay, so I'm here with you guys tonight because you have a problem, and we all do, making sure that the code is understandable and addresses what I believe are the four most important priorities. The fact of the matter is that, and we heard about this with the Alamo project earlier, safety really has to be a priority as far as the vehicles that park out on the street. What you're looking at there is a photograph of a situation that I've lived with for the last about 18 months. It's not really my situation personally, it's the city's situation. I have a homeowner who lives adjacent to me with an RV that parks literally out to the sidewalk on a, let's say, 50-degree bend or in the road. So there's a period of a place in the yard, in the sidewalk, where it's a blind spot, literally. Now, I know that people often are told that you can't ride a bicycle or skateboard on the sidewalk, but they do. So I have a concern with that. I also have a concern with aesthetics and property values, but that's not the primary goal here. There's also a conflict in the code because the setback, am I yellow already?
No.
Gee, okay.
You're fine. You still got 3 minutes to go.
Good, okay. Anyway, the setback needs to kind of be adjusted. I think it's conflicting, and it also may leave a liability open to the city. One of my correspondence that I wrote explained the fact that in my neighborhood, people use the sidewalk for other things. We're also on a corner where a senior citizens building is going to open. There are people in wheelchairs. Even now, I see a gentleman with a walker. They could easily be collided into by a bicycle, by somebody on a skateboard. I actually had somebody on a skateboard collide with me. My car wasn't even moving, so they were not injured, fortunately, but it's still a pain. I know that you're rewriting the code. I think something needs to be added in there to address at least clearance so that there's a visibility issue, or there's not a visibility issue to the public or to other motorists in the area or anybody who lives adjacent to one of those RVs. I don't have a problem with anybody else on my street. They all have a area or a pad on the side of their house that's existing. Most of the houses in our area, built in the 1960s, 1970s, they do have an RV pad. It's an amenity that you have when you buy your house, like an air conditioning, a central air conditioner, or a pool. I actually, I have a pool, and for my pool, I can actually see the front of this RV where they can also look and see me. I don't really appreciate it, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you why it's a problem. I've talked to my neighbor about it. They're angry with me. Somehow I'm the bad guy. This is not a good situation. Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. And please look at my paperwork. Good night.
Carolyn?
So RV parking on residential lots, the issue that just won't die. It's been going on for a long, long time. My name is Carolyn Rude, and I've lived in Simi Valley with my family for 47 years at the same address. I've been involved in the community over the years. I've been a member of school site councils at Atherwood Elementary and Sequoia Junior High. Been president of Simi Valley High Music Boosters. I was membership director of the Chamber of Commerce for a period of time. I was the staff liaison for Leadership Simi Valley, and I'm a graduate of the program. And I care about the community. So why are we here tonight? So you all know about 2 years ago, a few RV owners were annoyed when they were cited for noncompliance with the Simi Valley Municipal Code governing legal parking of RVs on residential properties. It's been mentioned that unlike most of our sister cities in Ventura County, Simi Valley has generous rules allowing such parking. But apparently this is not enough. Some RV owners have knowingly violated these rules, relying on the goodwill of their neighbors to ignore the elephant parked in the front yard next door. To compound the problem, the City Council suspended enforcement of RV parking while staff solicited input from neighborhood councils and prepared a report. The predictable result is an increase in non-compliant properties over the past couple of years. So here we are. We have a few RV owners pushing for additional residential parking concessions from their neighbors. To be honest, most of our residential lots will never accommodate these huge vehicles without significant impact on their neighbors. They often obscure views, hang over sidewalks, loom over property lines, block sight lines for neighbors trying to safely exit their driveways, damage green belts and curbs when they are driven onto front yards, and adversely impact neighborhood aesthetics, property values, and their neighbors' expectations to enjoy their biggest investment, their homes. The additional residential parking concessions being considered are fraught with potentials for abuse. A parking pad on the opposite side of a property from the driveway invites the front yard parking of additional vehicles, perhaps trailers, RVs, boats, jet skis. Despite the limit I heard mentioned in your report about limiting one RV per front yard, I don't know how that will be enforced. And what's to stop RVs currently in storage finding their way to a front yard near you? Staff noted a range of enforcement issues regarding backyard RV parking, including access to the properties by code enforcement. And what's to stop backyard RVs ending up as housing? In general, a lack of staff to enforce the code leaves concerned neighbors in the unwanted position of being neighborhood police. For the greater good of Simi Valley, I hope that the Planning Commission will set aside any personal interests and recommend to the City Council that there be no changes in the generous residential RV parking code, and that violators will be brought into compliance. And I have to add, after listening to the presentation tonight, I am so discouraged. I really am. It just, I think it's a never-ending thing, and the people that make the concessions are us non-RV owners. And I don't like looking at these big things in front yards, and I don't know of anyone that does except the RV owner. And if you were to have a 6-foot wall, those RVs tower over 6-foot walls. It's not going to do anything. So anyway, that's my feeling on RV. I was here going to city council meetings when we tried to get them off the street. So, and I think you'll open a big can of worms if you allow additional parking. So I think we need to enforce what we have and maybe make the regulations clearer. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Neff.
Good evening. Richard Neff here. My wife and I have lived in Simi Valley for 30 years, and I realize this issue is small potatoes for some people. For other people, it can be a real problem. And I'm in one of those problem areas in Simi Valley. The photo that was shown for a long time with, I think, about 3 RVs. This gentleman projected about 3 RVs on a city street. That's the kind of problem I'm addressing tonight. I think it boils down to at least 3 concerns, this whole issue, 3 concerns. One is safety, because as the first speaker was saying, one of the worst scenarios I can imagine is an RV that's parked right next to the sidewalk on the driveway, and next door someone backing out from their driveway and some kid skateboarding down the sidewalk, and there's a bad accident. We hope that never happens, but the chances are better when we see all these RVs in some areas of town, not everywhere, certainly, parked one after the other down the block. A second concern, I think, has to do, in my opinion, with property values and the aesthetics. Property values, I would like to get the opinion of some realtors and what they think about the property values going up or down or sideways on these streets where you see numerous RVs parked. I know that, again, going back to the photo that you showed with several, 3 or 4 on the street, I would not consider buying a house on that street. Nothing wrong with those houses. They're beautiful. You just can't see them well enough. I would just not consider buying a house on that street. Other people might disagree. Thirdly, related to the aesthetics is the fact that our city is becoming more and more sophisticated. It's growing. It's getting bigger. We have a first-class presidential library right here, a world-class library with the Reagan Library, which is one real draw. People want to come to Simi Valley for those kinds of reasons. We want to show a good side of our city. Everybody wants to show a good view, in my opinion. So finally, my understanding is that currently there's no enforcement of the rules that were in place a couple of years ago, and then a couple of years ago they were suspended. That's my understanding. And what has happened, unfortunately, in the past 2 years is some people, too many people in my opinion, have put in pads in their front yards, at least in my neighborhood, and there's no enforcement. There's no way to prevent that. Again, for the safety reasons, the aesthetics, and just the blocking of the view. My immediate neighbor a couple of years ago was going to put in a pad right next to my property line in his front yard, preventing my view down the street. I persuaded him he couldn't do that, and that was before the rules were suspended. So in closing, like Carolyn has said, this issue has been swirling around for a long time. I just urge you all to urge the City Council to resolve the issue. I would like to see it resolved. At the very least, I would be happy going back to the way we had it 2 years ago with enforcement, more teeth in the enforcement. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any comments from staff regarding statements made during the public hearing?
I just had a couple of comments. I don't know if we showed a comparison of the other cities in the area, but one thing that I can tell you from working in other jurisdictions, the current rules in Simi Valley are pretty permissive when it comes to RV parking, in that we allow RVs, boats, motorhomes, trailers to be parked in the front yard. And many other cities don't allow it. And it's really for the reasons that were raised by the public speakers, that these do become visual obstruction hazards for car movements out of driveways. So we don't allow 6-foot-high tall walls, fences or hedges in the front yards of property. We keep those low so you can see the house, so views aren't obstructed from neighboring driveways moving out. But our rules as written, and these rules were actually drafted by the community. These weren't just copied from the normal code book that we always use. But you can park these motorhomes that are very big and create these visual obstruction hazards. And that's why other cities chose not to do that. So I always want to remind people when we talk about creating public policy and keeping a little balance, the current rules are very permissive. Now, the big question is, do we allow them to be changed a little bit more? And that's always very difficult because we can show you aerial images of public nuisance properties where there's vehicles all over their rear yard, and nobody wants that, and nothing we heard in the neighborhood council wants that. But it becomes a regulatory difficulty. And that's why some of the current ordinances have been working well for the last 3 decades to limit it to some of the areas that were shown on our handout. So I just wanted to point that out. These are some of the things that came up at the neighborhood council, what I've heard from the community. There is this very common concern about the visual obstruction, and I do think it's very valid when you compare it to what other cities do.
Any other comments from staff? No further questions. We'll close the public testimony of the hearing. Are there any comments or questions from members of the Planning Commission?
Mr. Gibson, or Mr. Peros, perhaps. I understand the concept. So if we allow, currently we allow front yard parking of RVs under certain conditions. Apparently, there's a lot of folks who have strained those allowances and are out of compliance and therefore in need of remediation or change in their behaviors or whatever. So the thought is perhaps if we allow them to park their RVs in their backyards, then we won't have to see them in their front yards. I think that's the general concept. But then at the same time, you create the opportunity for persons to park in their backyards and in their front yards. So my question is this. I do question, what the regulatory issue is with persons parking in their backyard, and in combination with that issue, would we be able to, okay, fine, we can allow people to park in their backyard, but how about you maintain a rule that you get one unit? That's it. You cannot have more than the 1 unit for motorized RV parking. You've had a boat, it's a little bit lower, you have that kind of thing. But I understand. I mean, I don't own an RV. I did live in a house where my next door neighbor brought in an RV. He had, when he bought the house, he had RV access. It was part of the sales point. I knew it was there when I bought my house. And son of a gun, if the guy didn't bring in like a 40-foot vehicle, and oh my goodness, so we cheated the rules a little bit and put up some lattice work on top of the 6-foot wall, and it actually made things look a little bit better. But if he had had 2 of them and it went from the front yard all the way through the backyard, it would have been horrifying. It would have been this giant, massive wall of RV. So my thought is okay, provide the opportunity for people to park in the back. If I was one of the speakers, perhaps, I don't know, I probably could have asked them, would you rather have it in the front or would you rather have it in the back? My guess is you'd rather have it in the back because, it improves the curb appeal of your home. You don't have to look at it from the home. It resolves the obstruction issue, the line of sight issue. But I don't, think that anybody wants to see more than 1 vehicle in there. Okay, you allowed this parking in the back, but do you double up? Do you allow your friend to park there as well, so you've got the front and the back? According to what Mr. Peros just said, we're already one of the more permissive cities around. Do we want to exacerbate our issue while attempting to do something which would mitigate the problem and, in fact, would just duplicate the problem?
So, I don't know if that was a question or a statement.
Well, it wasn't a question because I want to know my question to you is this. I'd like to see us have a rule that says you can park in the back if you can get to the back and you can comply with all these rules. But if you do that, you can't also park in the front so that you have 1 unit and that's it. You can't have more than 1 unit of RV, and I don't know how we could define that, motorized or something to that effect. But you said that there's a enforcement problem with vehicles in the backyard. So I want to know what that enforcement problem is. Why is it a problem? Is I think what I'm saying. I take it because if people just have more than 1 unit, you don't even have to measure it. You see one, you see another. That's out of compliance.
Right. So right now, if you look on the screen, these are the approved locations for parking on a single-family property. These shaded areas. Now, right now, you could park in the rear yard on a driveway leading to an approved garage or carport. That could be any size garage or carport that we allow. And you could get as many vehicles as you could fit in this area. And even on this area, there's no limit to the size. But it says no uncovered parking allowed on the rear yard unless parked on concrete driveway leading, oh my goodness. So we currently have a rule that allows people to do this right now? Correct.
And what are we adding?
We're adding the provision to not have to construct a garage or carport.
No. Okay. I mean, cats.
And I would add, Commissioner Hodge, you raised up something that came up at the neighborhood council meetings. When these RVs are in the side or rear yard, and the person goes inside it, they're elevated up. There's usually windows in these vehicles, and they're overlooking the neighbors, and there's this loss of privacy. There's also when people go up on the roof of the vehicle to clean it or maintain it or do things, that they're way up there, and there's this lack of privacy with them. So everything you cited why you had to put the lattice work was repeated by members that were concerned about. It's bad that it's, on the property in the front obstructing, but it's no picnic when it's on the side and the vehicle starts up and it's rumbling right next to the house and the fumes are there, and that's also an issue that we heard. So, yeah, I don't know if there is a magical spot to put it, but when it comes to the side yard, but these were definitely public concerns raised at what we heard from the community.
Okay.
Other questions?
I don't have questions.
I have a statement.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
We're easy.
I concur with Commissioner Hodge. I think we're very permissive. We're very generous with our current zoning. Our current permissions. If we want to adopt the proposed amendments, I think we need to put a vehicle limit on how many you can store on a property. I'm very concerned with the health and safety impacts of allowing more front yard parking, especially when you have a blind curve that could potentially cause traffic accidents. We don't want to wait until there's a fatality that we actually do something about it. I'm also just disillusioned it's taken 2 years for us to get to this point. I wasn't on the commission for more than a year, as we all know. I think we need to act on this, and we need to give some relief to the people here in town, because I see a lot of people that are out of compliance, even under our old zoning or under our old code, because they're taking advantage of the fact we've suspended enforcement. So I would concur with Commissioner Hodge.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Currently, I can't park an abandoned vehicle in my front yard. If it's not registered, if it's not running, it'll get ticketed or towed or cited. What is to prevent me from parking an abandoned vehicle or an abandoned, in this case, RV or trailer in my backyard now? Is there, in the front yard, people can see it, cops can see it, ticket, tow it. In the backyard, they can't see it. Is there any provision that the city has to not allow abandoned vehicles just to litter a backyard?
I would say, when you say abandoned, I think you're referencing inoperable vehicles.
Correct.
Yeah. And that is a very common city code in other cities.
Okay.
That if you have an inoperable vehicle, that it shall only be parked in an enclosed building like a garage.
Right.
The problem with that, and Jean, do you have one of those bad examples of the public nuisance type properties? What happens is when you have a lot of inoperable vehicles, they become a obstruction for, first responders in case of emergency and things like that. They don't want to have to work around.
Oh, that's a good one.
There you go. That's a reality. If you do a Google Earth image search, now this isn't that common, but clearly nobody wants this.
Right.
What we heard from the neighborhood councils, but this is what some people will do with their property. They'll store these vehicles. They'll be, picking parts off of them or whatever they're made to be doing. And it harbors, vermin and rats. It creates a fire nuisance and for first responders, and it's definitely something we don't want to encourage. So city codes in other cities are very explicit to that. And from what I understood from our code enforcement folks, maybe we lack that ordinance in our code. So maybe something when we do our code amendments, we can add it.
So we currently don't have a code against something like this?
Yes, we do.
Or maybe.
Sorry.
Like I said before, you can't park in your rear yard unless you're on a driveway leading to a covered garage or carport. So yes, that is illegal.
But the inoperable nature of it?
Oh, and the inoperable? Yeah. You definitely can't have an inoperable vehicle in your front area, and the police will enforce on that. Whether it's inoperable or not, you can't have that. That's illegal.
Now, inoperable also covers currently not registered, so parking and out of expired on the side of the house again, it's not allowed.
Yeah, if a car is not, registered and it's on private property,
Okay.
we're not worried about that so much. It's, when you put it on the street is when the registration is more important. You can have an inoperable vehicle on your property. We just prefer it's inside of a garage or an enclosed building.
Okay. And as Mr. Gibson pointed out, there's currently no limitation for how many vehicles you can fit in that area, either 2 40-foots or 3 20-foots or whatever the case is?
That is correct, and that was one of the hiccups when this was addressed in the early 2000s.
Okay. Is there currently a front yard setback away from the sidewalk that you have to be 3 feet? Because one of the examples is that RV is right at the sidewalk. Is there no front setback for that vehicle?
Correct, there is no front setback for this parking area.
And there's no side yard setback either, currently?
Currently, there's no side yard setback either for outside parking.
Okay.
It's as long as the vehicle doesn't protrude into the sidewalk, and that's where they can be ticketed by a police officer.
Right. But like
But otherwise, no.
Like the pictures that circulate around, I mean, that person has that huge RV right on the sidewalk on a blind curve. That's perfectly allowed.
And it's flat. It's flat on the back. Most travel trailers, unless you park them in backwards, aren't flat like that.
Right.
Except on the back, possibly.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions or comments from a member of the Planning Commission?
Well, I think when we talk about this, I think we should break it apart because there's 3 different sections, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There was the administrative, the change to the business plan, and then the
rear parking.
The rear parking, right?
Right.
Okay. I would like to see us break those apart and go through those piece by piece. And before I move on, I just want to point out, I'm one of those people. I do have a travel trailer, and I do park it at my house. And I do talk to my neighbors, and most of my neighbors, the one thing they love about the neighborhood and the one thing they love about Simi is a lot of places you can park your RVs here. And in fact, I have a neighbor who moved from Moore Park because he just couldn't stand living in Moore Park because of their restrictive rules on RVs. And that's why he came here. So, and I know that. And I also know that I have friends who live in neighborhoods where they're not allowed to have RVs because they have homeowners associations which prevent that from happening. So.
I agree with Commissioner Rice about breaking out the 3 issues. I have no problem with issues 2 and 3. And so if no one else has an issue with problems 2 and 3, with items 2 and 3, maybe we can just focus on 1.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that, yeah. 2 and 3, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the conversation is on 1.
And my thought on that is if we currently have it, we don't want them on the front, we don't want them out on the street. We'd rather have it in the backyard, or perhaps we'd rather have it in the backyard. I realize that, they're a problem no matter what, but if we have the opportunity to get them off of the front and get them, somewhere else, and you're limited to 1, so you're not exacerbating the problem. I'm sort of in league with Commissioner Castleberry that, okay, fine, you can park in the backyard, you get 1 unit, end of story.
But that's not what's before us tonight.
I know, but that's my recommendation. That's what I would approve.
Before us tonight, do we allow additional parking in the back?
My answer is no. We don't change. We allow the parking on the side or the backyard, but you only get 1 unit, so that you're not going to conga line your vehicles, including your friend's vehicles or that kind of thing, because your friend has an RV but doesn't have RV access. Maybe you want to say, hey, park in my lot for $100 a month. Hey, that's great. And then next thing you know, you've got this horrible problem. Mm-hmm. We can soften the blow of somebody owning an RV and eliminate parking in the front if they also, can park in the back. So if they can park in the back and they want to, look, I'm not saying you command them to do it. That we have a rule that says you can't park in the front rather, if you can also park in the back. So, hey, you're not, you're out of compliance because you're parking in the front when you legally could park in the back. Even if they have that driveway that leads to a covered parking space in the backyard, you get 1 unit. But we provide them the opportunity to move it off the front into the back without being in violation of code. So you have the benefit of getting it off the front. By allowing them to put it in the back, it doesn't add to the detriment to the next door neighbor because there's more than 1 unit. It just changes the form of the detriment, and I think if you ask most folks, they would say they'd rather see it off the front and in the back. That's my thought. That would be what I would recommend at the city council.
So I think I have an idea of how we could proceed. So I talked to the city attorney, and so it's 2 different things that are before us. It's not 3. I guess the giving the administrative approval is lumped in with number 1. The only thing we can actually vote on tonight and send on forward would be the specific plan amendment. So we could send that on to the council tonight, and perhaps we could form a committee of myself and Commissioner Hodge to meet with staff and come up with proposed language for what we're describing. I'd also like to see a setback from the sidewalk. I don't think we should have them right up against the sidewalk either.
If that's legal to impose.
Yeah.
You can segregate the recommended resolutions. Approving a specific plan change.
So we could continue number 1 and approve number 2.
It's fine with me.
What?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, what are you defining as number 1?
Number 1 would be the ordinance, the development code text amendments, which is permitting the additional parking to the rear, and it would be allowing staff to have the administrative approval of an indoor RV storage with no limit. Number 3 would be the specific plan amendment, amending the Barton Brandeis specific plan.
So that would be setting 2 and 3 on.
Yeah, no, I believe maybe I'm mistaken, and Director Peros can correct me. Would the administrative approval fall under the specific plan amendment or the development code text amendment?
Yeah, if you look on pages 2 and 3 of the staff report, number 1 is the rear yard parking. Number 2 is the administrative conditional use permit for indoor storage businesses with no size limit. That's just how we approve them. And number 3 is to specifically allow it as an allowed use in the Brandeis-Bardeen specific plan with the CUP. That specific plan doesn't currently allow it. So 2 and 3 are actually 2 different things.
Okay.
And,
sorry.
The number 2 applies citywide. Number 3 is just for one specific plan in the city.
Okay.
So what is specifically consideration Z-S769?
So that is the entire, whenever we amend the code, where we're doing a zone change, a zone text amendment.
Okay.
So all of these were bundled under one entitlement, but if you want to segregate them or separate them.
And SP-S-9 is the same thing?
And SP is actually, that's amending the specific plan. So that's, we're amending the code to change that specific plan as well.
So that would be number 1 or that would be number 3?
That'd be number 3.
Number 3. So when we do a municipal code amendment, we're changing our code book. And when we do a specific plan amendment, we're just changing the text in the specific plan. They're both zone changes.
Okay, so SP-S-9 is more specific to the Brandeis-Bardeen.
Correct.
And Z-S769 is both the rear yard parking and the administrative conditional use permit?
That'd be a fair way to say.
Or can we break out the conditional use permit separate from the rear yard parking?
What you just said is correct. The first 2
Can you
items.
say that again? My wife may be listening on the TV.
The way I read it is the text amendments, Z-S-749, incorporate what I think is number 1 and number 2. And those can be segregated, so you can approve ZS-749, but only as to the administrative conditional use permits.
769, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I see the separate SB-S-9 as the Brandeis issue, and you can.
Got it.
You can make a recommendation to approve that.
Okay, is everybody good on that?
Okay, so that was SPS-9 Amendment 6?
Yes.
Okay. And then the first, how did you split apart, one more time, sorry.
Well, I think you
The
can.
ZS-749.
Has to.
769.
749.
749.
Why does mine say 769?
Oh, you know what? It's in the front, it says 69, and then the back says 49.
It is correct.
So it is 49?
It is 49.
So it's not, okay.
It's in the script, that's 69.
Got it.
I think we're all agreed on what to do, so let's figure out how to do it.
We just got to figure out how to say it.
Well, you would move to adopt a resolution recommending in part approval of Z-S-749 as it specifically relates to the administrative conditional use permit for indoor RV storage business.
Great, do I have a second?
So You can just take one at a time.
Okay.
I think I could do this. Hold on a second. No, it applies.
Take your time, and whenever you're ready, you can start with your motion.
RV storage. You have to have a reading of the resolution first.
Oh, sure. I have a reading of the resolution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Resolution number SVPC 022020, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Simi Valley recommending to the City Council approval of Development Code Amendment ZS 749 and Specific Plan Text Amendment SPS 9, Amendment Number 6, Brandeis Bardeen Specific Plan, and a determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act as amended.
Okay, so I move to adopt a resolution recommending approval of ZS 749 as it specifically applies to indoor RV storage business, and SPS 9, Amendment 6 as modified by the Planning Commission, and the determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
I'd like to add the word "only" to the end of where you say approve ZS 749, and you describe, in essence, item number 2.
Indoor storage business only.
Correct.
I concur.
Okay, but then, and then, all right. I would second that motion.
Okay. So we have first by Commissioner Rice and a second by Commissioner Hodge. Anything input?
You can vote.
Okay. Call for the vote. Motion passes. There's no appeal period for the zoning text amendment and specific plan amendment as modified.
So the final question before we say adios for the evening is, do we say anything about item number 1?
Oh, and let me finish my little text. And the items will proceed to the council with the planning commission's recommendation. Okay.
Do we say anything about item number 1? I mean, at this point, I think that we may not necessarily be opposed to adding the opportunity to park in the back, but we want some limitations
And
as to how,
modifications.
as the utilization of that opportunity.
So like Commissioner Castleberry, Vice Chairman Castleberry mentioned, we can continue this portion of it. If you want to have a subcommittee come meet with staff and we can talk about options, that's an option. If you want to give us direction on how you want to, modify it.
I like that proposal, the first part of what you just said.
Okay.
Subcommittee?
Yep.
Who wants to be on the subcommittee besides Vice Chair Castleberry?
Happy to do it.
Okay, so do you have an RV?
Nope.
Do you have an RV?
I do not.
Mr. Rice, I'd rather you be on, Commissioner Rice, only because now we have RV owner, non-RV owner, so there's somewhat equal representation.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay with that.
So Vice Chair Castleberry and Commissioner Rice will meet with city staff regarding the first part of the rear yard parking amendment.
Do we need a formal motion?
No, just a consensus to continue that particular specific.
That's fine. I'm good with that.
Consensus to continue?
Yeah. Very good.
Okay.
All right. Look at that.
Back to my next part of my script. New business, public hearings, other oral communications and reports.
Thank you, Chairman, man. Congratulations on getting through your first night. You did a fantastic job.
It's not over yet.
It's not over yet. There was a lot of comments tonight under public statements regarding the Tapo and Alamo project. I did write down a lot of notes, so hopefully when we come back on February 5th, for all those speakers, we'll try to incorporate that into our staff discussion and our presentation, because they did write, they raised some new information, like you mentioned earlier today, so we'll try to make sure we have answers to some of the questions that they were asking. I did want to alert the Planning Commission that on Monday, January 27th, and the public as well, that at 6:30 p.m. in the Simi Valley Library, there's going to be a meeting conducted by Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation regarding the Avenida Simi property at 3802 Avenida Simi. This is the one right next to the Senior Center, the vacant lot that's been proposed previously for an affordable development. They reached out to the community originally, had a kind of received some potential development options on the site. I think they've crafted something, and now they're going to be sharing with the community what they are considering building on the site. So if anyone's interested to seeing what's being proposed as far as looks like a residential type of development, they're welcome to meet with Cabrillo at the Simi Valley Library at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, January 27th. That's also City Council night on Monday, January 27th, and there will be two Planning Commission-related items. One is the appeal of the Planning Commission decision of the SRO project, the single-room occupancy at Tapo and Eileen. The Planning Commission recommended approval, however, the neighbors appealed it. That project will be heard by the City Council on Monday night, and there's also a general plan pre-screening on that night as well. Other than that, no other staff communications.
Let's see. Any commissioners, anything to report?
I'm going to be attending the California League of Cities Planning Commissioners Academy March 3rd through 6th in Sacramento with Commissioner Tolson. It's my second time going. I'm very excited to go and take in some knowledge and bring it back to the commission. I want to thank staff for their very hard work tonight. I know it was a long meeting and there was a lot to get through, and I really appreciate all the work you guys have been putting in because we've had quite a bit of business over the last few months.
Any other commissioners?
Nope.
Mobile Home Rent Mediation Board?
Nothing tonight.
Tree Advisory Board?
Nothing tonight.
Adjournment. This concludes the meeting of, where are we at? January 22nd. Next scheduled meeting will be February 5th, 2020. This meeting is adjourned.
Well, that's going to be fun. You made it through.